Imagine. You wake before dawn, and the world is silent except for the wind rolling across the English plains. Mist clings to the grass, heavy and luminous in the pale half-light before sunrise. Through it, dark shapes rise, towering, immovable, ancient. The air is damp and cold, and the earth beneath your boots feels soft, almost breathing. You take a few slow steps forward. The shapes solidify. Stones. Enormous stones arranged in a perfect, impossible circle. Each one taller than a man, older than memory. The wind moves between them like a whispering voice. You reach out to touch one, a single gray giant worn smooth by 5,000 winters, and the surface feels alive with time itself. You think you're standing among ruins, but you're not. You're standing inside a message. A message carved in stone by hands that are dust now, a message that has never stopped speaking, even if we no longer understand the words. Beneath your palm, the rock is cold, almost wet with the morning dew. When you pull your hand away, a thin film of mist drifts between your fingers. The silence is profound. The kind that hums, not emptily, but with the weight of ages. Somewhere to the east, a faint light grows behind the hills. The first suggestion of dawn. You glance along the alignment of the stones, and notice something uncanny. They are not random. They face that light, perfectly. As though the builders knew exactly where the sun would rise, not just today, but forever. That's the first secret of Stonehenge. It listens to the sky. It's strange, isn't it? To stand in the middle of an English field and feel the pull of something that outlasts civilization itself. For 5,000 years, this circle of stones has watched the world change. Empires have risen and fallen. Languages have bloomed and vanished. Kings, plagues, revolutions, all came and went. Yet the stones have remained. Watching. Waiting. They are not silent, not really. They just speak in a language older than words, a language of shadow, light, and rhythm. You can almost imagine it now, the sound that might have once filled this place. The low thrum of drums. The shuffle of bare feet on damp earth. Smoke rising from a nearby fire, carrying the scent of ash and wetwood. The murmured prayers of people whose names history never learned. They built this monument not for vanity, nor for conquest, but for something deeper. Something sacred. Something we still haven't quite understood. The plain around you, the Salisbury Plain, rolls out in soft folds, a sea of grass under a restless sky. In the distance, sheep move like ghosts through the fog. Modern life feels impossibly far away. Cars, cities, satellites, none of it belongs here. Here, time moves differently. Here, the earth still keeps its own calendar. Archaeologists call Stonehenge a prehistoric monument. But the phrase feels too small, too academic. This isn't just a monument. It's a living clock. A temple of shadow and sun. A place where stone and sky learn to speak to each other. No one really knows who first dreamed it. Around 3000 BC, long before the first stones were raised, this was nothing more than an earthen circle, a ring of ditches and banks carved into the chalky soil with deer antlers and bones for tools. Imagine that. People kneeling in the cold, scraping white chalk from the earth with nothing but their hands and bone picks, creating a perfect circle that could only be seen properly from the sky. They didn't have metal. They didn't have wheels. But they had vision. And time. And purpose. When you stand here long enough, the scale of it begins to sink in. These people, your ancestors, our species, had no written language. No mathematics as we know it. Yet they built something that still puzzles our most advanced technology. Think about that. Every stone perfectly aligned, every gap deliberate. It was not built in one go, but over centuries. Generations lived and died for this place, each adding, adjusting, renewing, as though obeying instructions passed not in words, but in ritual. The wind picks up. It sighs between the stones, and for a moment, it almost sounds like chanting. You can picture them, can't you? Figures moving through mist, carrying torches. The rhythmic beat of drums echoing through the valley. The smell of smoke mingling with wildflowers and sweat. At dawn, they gather in silence. The horizon begins to burn gold. And then, at the precise instant the sun lifts, its light pours straight through the center of the circle, flooding the altar stone. A perfect alignment, made by people who lived before the pyramids. They must have stood there, breathless, as the world itself seemed to open. That alignment still happens today. Every midsummer, crowds gather to watch the sunrise through those ancient stones, cheering as the first light splits the horizon. But 5,000 years ago, it wasn't celebration. It was communion. The sun wasn't a symbol, it was life. The boundary between survival and death. Between harvest and hunger. To mark its rising and setting was to acknowledge the heartbeat of the world. And maybe that's what these stones are, a heartbeat, frozen in stone. A reminder that even the earth keeps time. But what sort of people could imagine something like this? To modern eyes, the builders of Stonehenge are faceless. We call them Neolithic Britons, but that's just a placeholder, a name we give to the unknown. Yet they were real. They farmed. They raised children. They buried their dead in the mounds that still dot these plains. They carved antler picks and polished axes from green stone that gleamed like jade. They understood seasons, soil, and stars. Their world was smaller, perhaps, but not simpler. Somewhere in that world, someone looked at the sun rising and thought, we can shape this. Not worship it blindly, but build with it. Align our lives to its rhythm. Create something that will endure beyond us. You can almost see that moment, the spark of intention. It begins with a single idea whispered around a fire. Then, over years, it grows. Tools are made. Hands blister and bleed. Trees are felled for wooden posts, the first version of Stonehenge, long before the great stones arrive. Maybe this early circle was ringed by wooden pillars, like a vast timber temple. The earth beneath them packed hard by countless feet. People come from miles away, bringing offerings, antlers, pottery, bits of bone. Maybe even the ashes of their dead. This place wasn't just architecture. It was conversation, between the living and the dead, between the earth and the heavens. Archaeologists have found signs of feasting here. Animal bones, roasted and discarded. Pig jaws split open for marrow. 1,000 footprints pressed into the clay. Evidence of gatherings, rituals, maybe even festivals. You can almost hear it now, laughter and music under a pale moon, firelight flickering on the stones that were yet to come. A community united not by blood or tribe, but by purpose. The mist thickens again, curling low around the stones. You take a slow breath, tasting salt and chalk and age. To stand here is to feel small, but not in a way that belittles you. Rather, it connects you. You are part of the same story. The same long rhythm of life and death, of building and dreaming. The sun is higher now, its rays turning the mist into liquid gold. The stones glow softly, as though they are lit from within. Each carries scars, grooves where ropes once bit deep, chips where time gnawed. But they remain. Immovable. Defiant. Eternal. For centuries, people have asked what Stonehenge means. Was it a temple to the dead? A map of the stars? A calendar? A portal between worlds? Maybe it was all of these. Maybe it was none. Maybe meaning itself was never the point. Perhaps the act of building, the struggle, the unity, the devotion, was the meaning. Because think about it. To move even one of these stones would take hundreds of people, miles of rope, and weeks of labor. And yet they did it, again and again, generation after generation. No kings ordered it. No armies enforced it. It was done willingly, collectively, with reverence. In that sense, Stonehenge is less a monument and more a memory of cooperation. A belief strong enough to shape stone. The wind dies for a moment. The world feels still. Even the birds have gone quiet. It's easy to imagine that the stones are listening. Over the centuries, poets and travelers have come here, trying to find words for what they feel. Most fail. The experience defies language. It's not about knowledge, it's about presence. To stand among the stones is to feel the pulse of the earth itself, the slow heartbeat of a civilization that refused to vanish completely. You can still sense them here, the builders, the dreamers, the nameless priests. Their hands, their songs, their smoke. They are gone, and yet somehow, you are not alone. The light shifts again. The sun clears the horizon fully now, spilling warmth across the plain. The mist begins to dissolve, and for a heartbeat, the entire monument seems to shimmer, not with magic, but with memory. You step back slowly, reluctant to break the spell. Stonehenge stands before you, older than history, yet alive in this moment. The stones speak in silence. And if you listen closely, you might almost understand. The mist drifts lower now, curling between your feet, wrapping around your ankles as if the earth itself is reluctant to let you go. The sunlight turns the air the color of honey, and for a moment, the stones gleam like old bones half buried in gold. You take a step backward, eyes lingering on the monoliths, and the sound of the wind changes. It becomes a rhythm, not quite music, not quite speech, but something in between. It carries you backward through time. The grass beneath your boots softens. The world exhales. And when you blink, the stones are gone. The year is roughly 3000 BC. The plain is raw and unshaped, a wilderness of high grass, scattered forests, and slow rivers that gleam like spilled silver beneath the sky. The air smells of wood smoke and rain, of soil freshly broken by antler picks. A thin trail of people winds across the field, their silhouettes wavering in the distance like ghosts. They carry no metal, no wheels, no beasts of burden. Just tools of bone and wood, baskets woven from reeds, and the quiet certainty of purpose. This is where it began. They do not yet have the stones. Those will come centuries later. For now, they have only the land, the chalk beneath their feet, the horizon that stretches endlessly, and the sun that rises and falls with divine precision. Somewhere among them, a figure, perhaps a woman, perhaps a man, kneels, pressing a hand into the soil. The earth is pale, powdery, almost white. Beneath its thin skin of grass lies the heart of chalk, soft enough to carve yet strong enough to endure. The figure looks up, squinting against the wind, and in that instant, something begins. A vision. A circle. A promise between the living and the world they inhabit. The work begins slowly. The first stitch is cut into the ground, curving perfectly around an invisible center. Each scoop of earth is lifted with deer antlers, carried away in woven baskets, emptied, and returned. It is backbreaking labor, but there is rhythm in it, the steady scrape of bone on chalk, the soft murmur of voices, the low hum of song. They work not in haste, but in reverence. And when the circle is complete, they stand at its edge and see something beautiful, a ring of pure white gleaming against the green of the plain, so vast that 1,000 people could stand within it. This is the first Stonehenge, a monument not of stone, but of earth and intention. An earthen henge, the word henge, meaning the bank and ditch that cradle the sacred space within. You can almost feel the energy of that first gathering. They come from miles around, from river valleys, from forest clearings, from distant hills marked with burial mounds. Smoke rises from their fires at night, dozens of them flickering across the plain. The air fills with the sound of flutes carved from bird bone, drums made from stretched hide. They bring offerings, carved beads, polished stones, bones of animals sacrificed under the open sky. They bury these in the soil of the henge, sealing them beneath the chalk as though feeding the earth itself. There are no kings here. No written decrees. Just the shared belief that this place matters, that it marks a turning point between worlds, a threshold between what is seen and what is unseen. You walk among them now, invisible, an observer in the long night of history. The people are shorter than you expect, sturdy and weathered by the seasons. Their clothes are simple, woven flax, leather, wool from small, wiry sheep. Their faces are marked with soot and ochre. Some have beads braided into their hair. They smell of smoke and earth and salt. Children run along the bank, laughing, their bare feet kicking up dust. Nearby, a group of elders chant softly around a small fire, their words lost to time. And all the while, the circle gleams, white and perfect under the slow turn of the stars. At the center of the henge lies a pit, wide, deep, and lined with chalk. Into it they place bones, ashes, fragments of pottery. These are not random. They are the remains of their dead. Stonehenge, before it was a temple of stone, was a temple of memory, a cemetery of souls. Later ages will forget this. They will call it a calendar, an observatory, a mystery. But in these first moments, it is simpler and more human, a place to return the dead to the earth beneath an open sky. When dawn comes, the mist lifts, and the first sunlight of midsummer spills into the hollow of the ditch. It strikes the freshly cut chalk, dazzlingly white. The people gasp softly, eyes wide. They did not build it to trap the sun, yet somehow they have. The light glides along the curve of the ditch, catches on the mound, and pools at the center like liquid fire. The earth itself seems to glow. From that day on, this alignment becomes sacred. The people will return again and again to watch it, marking the passage of the seasons by the path of the sun through this holy ground. And so a rhythm begins, not just in the sky, but in the hearts of those who watch it. The henge becomes their calendar, their compass, their inheritance. As centuries pass, generations will come and go. The circle will grow richer with meaning. New mounds will rise nearby, round barrows for the honored dead, small rings of posts or stones echoing the great henge. The plain itself becomes a landscape of memory, a sacred map etched onto the land. You stand in the middle of it all, watching time unfold. The seasons turn like pages, summer fields golden and humming with bees, winter skies cold and blue as slate. Each year, people return to this circle, tending it, repairing it, adding to it. The banks rise higher, the ditches deepen. They lay timber posts within the circle, great trunks of oak and pine hauled from distant forests. At night, fires burn in the center, and dancers move among the flickering light. The air trembles with drumbeats, with chants that roll like thunder. From far away, the sound must carry across the plain, a heartbeat of civilization itself. No one writes their names, but you can feel their presence, these first architects of eternity. They lived close to the edge of survival, yet they gave their strength to build something that would outlast them all. Their faith wasn't in gods carved from stone, but in the cycle of life itself, the sun, the seasons, the endless return. The years slip forward like sand through fingers. The timber posts decay. The soil drifts. And slowly, the people begin to dream of something greater. They look to the mountains of Wales, where stones unlike any on this plain lie waiting, hard, blue, and gleaming with flecks of crystal. Stones that hum when struck. Stones that, they believe, hold healing power. But that is still far in the future. For now, the circle of earth endures, its white chalk banks glowing like a wound in the landscape, or perhaps a scar, sacred, indelible, alive. You walk along the ridge of the henge as the sun sets over the western hills. The air cools. Smoke from distant fires drifts across the fields, carrying with it the faint scent of roasted grain and damp wood. In the distance, a heron glides low over a stream. The first stars begin to pierce the twilight. And for a long, breathless moment, it feels as if the entire plain is holding still. The land, the sky, the people, the silence, all part of the same breath. It began here, with earth and vision. Before the great stones, before the myths, before the centuries of wonder and speculation, there was this, A circle of chalk and willpower, drawn by hands that knew they were shaping something beyond themselves. As the night deepens, you can almost hear the echo of their voices, distant, rhythmic, carried on the wind. A language without words, still speaking through soil and shadow. The stars brighten. The horizon fades. And as you turn slowly, the world begins to shift again, centuries folding over centuries, as if time itself is readying the next act of this great, silent play. Soon the stones will come. But for now, the plain sleeps, dreaming of what will rise upon it. The night lingers long on the plain. Stars will silently overhead, their light washing the chalk banks in silver. For generations, this ring of earth has held its vigil, watching, waiting. Then, somewhere on the horizon, a sound begins. Faint at first, a groan of wood, the creak of rope, the splash of water against something heavy. It carries across the fields like the murmur of thunder far away. The people turn their faces toward it. They know that sound. Change is coming. It begins with whispers, stories carried from the west, from a land of mountains and mist where strange blue stones gleam in the riverbeds. Stones said to heal sickness? Stones said to hum when struck by rain? No one knows who first dreamed it. Perhaps a leader, a seer, a woman whose visions came with the dawn. But the dream spreads like fire. Bring them here. For centuries they have honored the earth. Now they will raise the bones of the earth itself. They will build not with chalk or timber, but with rock as old as creation. And so, across the green breadth of what will one day be Britain, a migration begins. Imagine the sight: hundreds of people moving slowly across the hills, dragging logs, ropes, sledges. Behind them, on wooden rafts that creak and dip through river currents, ride the first of the stones, massive, glistening blue-gray in the sunlight. The air rings with the thud of poles and mud, the rhythmic grunt of labor, the crack of frozen bark as ropes tighten. Children walk beside the procession, singing songs to keep the rhythm. Dogs bark. Smoke curls from fires built along the route, where travelers rest, mend ropes, feed the fires, and whisper of what waits at journey's end. 200 kilometers they travel, from the mountains of Wales to the open heart of the Salisbury Plain. Through forests where bore root in the undergrowth, through valleys threaded with rivers that shine like molten glass beneath the sun. Every obstacle is met with invention. Rivers become roadways. Hills become tests of will. Sometimes they move by water. You can see it now, a line of rafts bound together with twisted willow, bobbing down a slow river under the pale light of the moon. The stones lie on their bellies, lashed with ropes, each weighing as much as a small herd of oxen. The current tugs at them, whispering promises of failure, but still they move. Men wade alongside, guiding the rafts with poles, their bodies slick with sweat and cold water. If one slips beneath the surface, the river closes over him without a ripple. There are no funerals, only silence and continuation. The stones must arrive. On land, sledges grind across logs laid end to end. Every few steps, the logs are carried from the back of the line to the front again, a moving road of wood and breath. The air smells of sap and smoke and human effort. Someone calls out a chant, the group joins in, and the rhythm steadies the pull. Step. Breathe. Haul. Step. Breathe. Haul. The sound of humanity united by a single impossible purpose. Weeks turn to months. The land itself seems to rise and fall with their movement. Villages greet them, feed them, marvel at the sight. The travelers tell stories of what they are building, a place where earth and sky will meet. A place where sickness will fade and the spirits of the dead will rest. Some join them. Others simply watch, uncertain whether to call them holy or mad. At last, the hills of the plain appear, rolling, open, waiting. The ditch still glimmers white beneath the sun, the circle they carved centuries before. When the first stone arrives, there is no celebration, no rest. Only awe. It stands taller than any man, heavier than imagination. When the ropes tighten around it, the people fall silent. Even the wind seems to pause. They drag it toward the circle. The ground trembles. Every inch gained feels like defiance of nature itself. When the stone finally reaches the edge of the henge, they halt. Some weep, others simply stare, their faces streaked with sweat and chalk dust. They have brought the mountain to the plain. You can see it in their eyes, exhaustion, yes, but also wonder. They are changing the shape of the world. Ropes are strung from wooden frames, and the slow ritual of raising begins. Logs act as levers. Holes are dug, angled, measured by sight and intuition alone. They haul, they brace, they pray. The stone tilts, hesitates, sways. And then, with a roar of voices, it finds its footing, sinking deep into the chalk pit prepared for it. The ropes go slack. The first bluestone stands upright, shuddering in the wind like a living thing. The cheer that follows isn't joy alone, it's disbelief. For a moment, everyone sees the impossible become real. A mountain has risen from the earth again. They raise more, one by one, each placed with care, forming a double arc. From a distance, it looks like the ribs of some ancient creature thrusting up from the plain. By night, fires glow within the circle, their smoke drifting into the stars. The people dance, their shadows flickering across the stone's blue surfaces. Some lay hands upon the rock, whispering prayers for healing. Others sleep against it, hoping to dream of their ancestors. The circle hums with new power. Even centuries later, archaeologists will find traces of heat discoloration on the stones, proof that fires once licked their sides. This was not a cold monument. It was alive, fed by flame, by song, by hope. And yet the story does not end here. Generations pass. The bluestones weather, crack, fall. The people change. New customs, new tools, new dreams. But the pull of this place remains. Somewhere, someone decides that the small circle of blue is no longer enough. They will build greater stones, stones from the very bones of the plain itself. From the Marlborough Downs to the north, the Sarsens wait, massive slabs of sandstone scattered like sleeping giants. Each one heavier than 20 of the blue stones combined. The distance, 30 kilometers. The challenge, impossible. But they have already learned how to move mountains. You can almost hear the preparation, the rasp of flint on rope, the call of voices echoing across the fields. Trees fall, stripped for rollers. The air fills with the smell of crushed greenery, of sweat and crushed chalk. One by one, the Sarsens begin their slow journey south. The earth moans beneath them. The plain shudders. Each stone can weigh 40 tons. 40. It takes entire villages working together, their muscles locked in rhythm, their hearts hammering in time with the pull. They drag through mud and frost, through rain and endless wind. Some die along the way. Others are born beside the tracks the stones carve into the ground. This is no longer a single generation's dream, it is a nation's inheritance. And when the first of the great Sarsens reaches the circle, even the elders fall to their knees. The stones are prepared, shaped by hammering with other stones, chipped and smoothed until their surfaces gleam pale as bone. Grooves are carved into their tops, tenons to lock them with the lintels that will rest above. This is engineering centuries ahead of its time, geometry born from instinct. The day of raising comes. You stand among them now, the air heavy with anticipation. Ropes stretch taut, wooden frames creak, men shout commands swallowed by the wind. The earth underfoot quivers with effort. Slowly, agonizingly, the first Sarsen tilts upright. The ropes strain like veins under tension. Dust fills the air, blinding, choking. Then, suddenly, it stands. A single vertical monolith, its shadow stretching long across the grass. Another follows, then another. When the lintels are lifted into place, hauled up ramps of earth and rolled on wooden sledges, the impossible becomes harmony. Stone rests upon stone, not by chance but by design. From above, if you could see it, the shape would begin to emerge, a great outer ring of towering stones capped with lintels, forming an unbroken circle. Within it, smaller arcs, inner sanctums, pathways of light. A temple both earthly and celestial. The people stand in silence when it is done. Their faces glow with the firelight of torches planted in the ground. Above them, the stars turn slowly, as though approving. The air hums again, that same deep vibration you felt before, wind threading through openings, catching edges, creating tones that shift with the weather. Stonehenge begins to sing. No one writes down what it means. They don't need to. The meaning is in the doing. It is a message to the sky, a heartbeat carved from the bones of the world. As dawn breaks over the plain, sunlight finds its way through the newly raised circle, striking the altar stone at its core. For a heartbeat, the entire monument ignites with gold. Every face turns toward it. Every voice falls silent. In that moment, they are not farmers or builders or wanderers. They are one with the turning of the earth. You can feel it even now, the echo of that morning, carried through 5 millennia. The stones still stand, still aligned, still waiting for the first light of midsummer to touch them exactly as those ancient hands intended. The wind stirs again, cool and endless. The builders fade into shadow, their chants dissolving into the breath of the plain. Only the stones remain, tall, solemn, alive. And as you stand among them, the centuries begin to shift once more. The voices of the dead give way to new whispers, questions of how, of why, of what power moves such weight through the world. The mystery of movement is about to begin. The wind whispers through the standing stones, curling around their edges, carrying a low, steady hum, as though the earth itself is still catching its breath after the raising of giants. The people who built this place have faded into memory, but their questions remain. Even now, you can feel one of them forming at the back of your mind. The same question that has haunted every visitor since the first archaeologists knelt in the chalk. How did they move them? You look at the nearest sarsen. It towers above you, the color of weathered bone. 40 tons of solid sandstone, dragged here from miles away without wheels, iron, or beasts of burden. It leans slightly toward you, just enough to feel as though it's aware of being observed. The mere existence of this stone feels like an act of defiance, a declaration that the impossible is only a word invented by those who have forgotten how to dream together. And yet the question gnaws at you. How? You close your eyes, and the centuries peel back again. The air grows thicker, the sky younger, the sound of distant voices returns. The plain is alive once more with movement, ropes, timber, sweat, and song. The first thing that strikes you is the rhythm. Nothing is rushed. Every motion follows a pulse, a communal heartbeat that guides hands and ropes alike. Picture it, hundreds of people working in unison, bodies bent forward, arms straining against thick cords of twisted fiber made from lime bark and animal sinew. The ropes cut into their shoulders, leaving dark grooves, but still they pull. Their bare feet dig into the damp chalk, each step a negotiation with gravity. At the front of the procession, a group of leaders shout in time with the chant, words long lost, but the cadence survives, a call, a response, a shared breath that binds them. Haul. Step. Haul. Step. Each sarsen rides on a sledge of oak, its base greased with animal fat to ease the drag. Beneath it, wooden rollers turn, creaking like the bones of the earth. As the rear logs are freed, they are carried to the front again, laid down, and the slow, rhythmic journey continues. The work goes on for days. The path from the Marlborough Downs is long and uneven, hills, valleys, rivers. But the people are patient. They rest at night by the fire, wrapped in furs, their faces smeared with chalk dust and smoke. Children sleep beside them. Elders whisper prayers over the stones as though speaking to the soul trapped within. By dawn, they rise again, the air filled with the damp scent of dew and wool. And once more they pull. From the river banks, others watch, traders, travelers, curious wanderers. To them, this must look like madness. Hundreds of people hauling mountains across the land for no reason that makes sense. But the builders know better. They are not just moving stone. They are moving belief. The sound of the ropes tightening, the hiss of the sled across wet chalk, it becomes almost hypnotic. Time collapses into the rhythm of effort. Sometimes the earth gives way. A sledge tilts. Ropes snap. A cry goes up, and hands rush forward to steady the load. There are injuries, crushed limbs, broken bones, deaths even, but the work never stops. Each stone that falls is mourned like a person, and each one raised again becomes a victory for the living. Archaeologists will later find traces of these struggles, deep ruts carved into the chalk, patches of scorched earth where fires burned through the night to soften the ground. They'll find hammerstones, shattered under the weight of labor, and fragments of bone from animals used to feed the workers. Every mark, every scar in the soil, a whisper of the cost. And yet, when you step back, it is beautiful. Because for all their hardship, these people have created something extraordinary. Not a monument to gods or kings, but a collaboration so vast it reshaped the landscape. As you watch, the scene shifts again, further back in time now, to the smaller bluestones that came before. The air is different here, wetter, wilder. The smell of pine resin and river mud fills your lungs. The stones lie waiting in the hills of Presili, their blue surfaces gleaming with veins of quartz. You can almost hear the first hammer blow, the sharp crack of stone against stone. Flakes fall away, and the shape begins to emerge, raw, heavy, but purposeful. The people touch the stones gently when they break free, whispering thanks. They believe the rock has spirit, that to wound it without permission is dangerous. The next step is transport, and here, the mystery deepens further. Did they haul them all the way across mountains and rivers, hundreds of kilometers to the plain? Or did glaciers once move them first, dropping them near enough for humans to claim as divine gifts? Science leans one way, legend leans another. But perhaps both are true. Perhaps the stones themselves wanted to travel. One story, told by medieval chroniclers thousands of years later, says that the wizard Merlin brought them here from Ireland. That he sang to the stones, and they lifted into the air, floating gently across the sea to this very field. It sounds like fantasy, yet in its own way, it captures the truth. Because what happened here was magic, even if it was made of sweat and rope instead of spells. You walk closer to one of the sarcens, tracing the faint tool marks carved by Neolithic hands. The edges are smoother than you expect. The surface glitters with mica, flecks of light trapped in the rock. You realize that every inch of this surface was touched, shaped, considered. These weren't random boulders dragged from the fields. They were chosen, for size, color, sound. Sound. When the wind blows just right, the stones sing. Not a melody, but a deep, resonant hum, the air moving through their gaps and grooves, vibrating across the surface like a giant instrument. Some believe the builders understood this, that they placed the stones to catch the wind in harmony with the human voice. If true, Stonehenge was not only a temple of light but of sound, a living resonance chamber. Imagine it, drums beating, voices chanting, the wind joining in, until earth, sky, and human breath merge into one endless note. That's not superstition. That's physics, a sacred kind. You glance down and notice the earth beneath your feet is not flat. The builders cut shallow ramps, pits, and ditches to maneuver each block into place. They used levers of oak as thick as your thigh. They piled earth ramps high, rolled the stones up on greased sledges, then removed the ramps afterward, leaving no trace but the awl. A group of engineers once reconstructed the process. With only a few dozen people, simple ropes, and wooden rollers, they raised a stone in a single day. Multiply that by generations, and the impossible becomes methodical. Still, it doesn't lessen the wonder. If anything, it deepens it. Because the mystery of movement isn't just about logistics. It's about motive. Why go to such effort? Why risk lives for stone? You look around at the ring, at the light threading between its pillars, at the way every stone seems to lean toward the center like worshippers frozen in mid-bow. And the answer, if there is one, feels simple, because they could. Because in moving these stones, they move themselves, from survival to creation, from fear to faith. To drag a 40-ton block across a continent is to declare that humans belong to the world, not merely as passengers, but as its shapers. The last of the great stones rises. Dust falls from its flanks, catching sunlight in a golden haze. The workers collapse, some laughing, some crying. Their calloused hands tremble as they touch the base, as if reassuring themselves it is real. The chants begin again, slower now, deeper. A fire is lit at the circle's edge. Its smoke climbs into the clear blue sky and curls around the stones like incense. From a distance, the entire monument looks like a crown set upon the brow of the earth. The mystery of movement doesn't end with the last raised stone. It continues even now, every gust of wind, every passing shadow shifting across these giants. They still move, in their way. Slowly, imperceptibly, with the turning of the world. And standing there, you realize something else. Movement isn't only about distance. It's about transformation. These stones were once mountain, once riverbed, once weight buried in silence. Now they are memory. Now they are meaning. They have crossed not just land, but the boundary between the physical and the eternal. The wind sighs again, tracing its long path through 5,000 years. In its breath you hear echoes of rope and wood, of chant and laughter, of bones creaking under strain. The people are gone, but the movement never stopped. It carries forward, through centuries, through your veins, through every heartbeat that stands in awe of what they left behind. You turn slowly within the circle, the stones towering above you, the light breaking in narrow beams through their gaps. Somewhere on the horizon, the sun dips, and shadows lengthen, merging stone and earth into one. The work is done, but the questions remain. How? Why? Who were they, these dreamers of stone and sky? Perhaps the answer lies not in the stones themselves, but in the stars they mirror. You lift your gaze to the heavens, where the first stars begin to pulse against the deepening blue. They are the same stars those builders once watched, the same sky they measured with ropes of light. And as darkness gathers, another revelation begins to stir, not of movement, but of purpose. Because the stones do not end with effort. They begin with alignment. With the understanding that what is built on earth can speak to what moves in heaven. The night deepens. The air cools. The last ember of the setting sun fades behind the western hills. You step closer to the altar stone, where the shadow of the tallest sarsen lies across its face. The movement has stopped, but the alignment is perfect. And soon, as the first light of a new dawn returns, you'll see what they built it for. The architecture of the sun is about to begin. The last ember of twilight fades, and the world settles into silence again. The air cools. The stones stand motionless, their long shadows merging with the grass. You can feel the temperature drop as the night deepens, the earth exhaling after its long day of labor. For a while, nothing moves. And then, almost imperceptibly, the eastern horizon begins to breathe. A faint thread of light rises there, not enough to banish darkness, but enough to promise its return. The edge of the plain softens, the mist begins to lift, and the first star closest to dawn fades into invisibility. You step closer to the altar stone. Its surface glistens faintly with dew. Around you, the tall sarsens lean toward the east, as though waiting for something. The circle feels like a great clock wound tight through the night, ready for its hour to strike. The sky brightens slowly, tenderly. The gray deepens into rose. The rose melts into gold. And then, the sun appears. It rises not at random but precisely between two towering uprights, the heel stone and its companion. For one suspended moment, The light pierces straight through the heart of the monument, passing between lintels, sliding along the smooth flanks of the inner stones, and striking the altar stone square in its center. The effect is otherworldly. The entire monument seems to ignite from within, gold fire flickering across ancient surfaces, shadows contracting and stretching like living things. You stand in the center, bathed in that light, and it feels deliberate, as if this moment was crafted, engineered, rehearsed by minds long gone. Because it was. This is not accident. This is architecture, not of stone, but of the sun. Centuries before written calendars, before clocks or compasses, these people understood the sky's rhythm better than we do now. They watched it for generations, the rising and setting of the sun, the lengthening of shadows, the slow dance of the stars. They marked every shift in season, every subtle tilt of the horizon's light. From those observations, they carved a monument that could hold time still. The stones are more than walls. They are markers of celestial precision. Each alignment, every gap, every lintel, measures something vast and eternal. Look closer. The line from the heel stone through the altar marks the midsummer sunrise. Turn 180 degrees, and that same line points directly toward the midwinter sunset. The two extremes of the year, the longest day and the longest night, bound this monument like parentheses enclosing a prayer. This is no mere temple. It is a map of light itself. The architects of Stonehenge, whoever they were, possessed no metal tools, no written language. And yet, they created a solar observatory accurate to the degree. They tracked the universe by watching shadows move on stone. Imagine the patience that required. For generations, they must have watched the sun's arc, waiting for the moment when it rose in the same place again. Imagine standing here year after year, watching dawn creep along the horizon, a few inches this way in spring, a few inches that way in autumn, until one morning, it returned to the exact notch between the stones. That is when they knew they had caught the sun in their circle. You can almost see them, figures wrapped in fur and wool, faces turned east, the first light washing over their features. The air hums with quiet reverence. The crowd stretches beyond the henge, people gathered from distant settlements, their breath steaming in the morning chill. Children sit on their parents' shoulders. Drums begin to beat softly, echoing the rhythm of a heartbeat. As the sun climbs higher, voices join, low chants that rise and fall like waves. It isn't worship in the way we might imagine. It's gratitude, recognition, the assurance that the world still turns, that warmth will return, that seeds will grow again. In that instant, humanity and cosmos are in perfect alignment. You stand among them, feeling the pulse of the crowd, the heat of the light. The stones seem to glow, alive with reflection. The lintels cast clean, sharp-edged shadows on the grass. The altar stone beneath your feet hums faintly with absorbed warmth. From here, everything radiates outward, the geometry of meaning spreading across the plain. The builders didn't just raise stones, they choreographed sunlight. They created a dialogue between heaven and earth, where the sun answers questions only time could ask. The architecture of the sun is built on patience, pattern, and awe. Even now, millennia later, the precision remains. Each year, modern pilgrims gather here at midsummer, waiting in the pre-dawn chill. Some come for ritual, some for wonder, some simply to feel what those first builders felt. When the sun breaks the horizon, the crowd erupts in cheers, and for an instant, the ancient alignment lives again. Yet behind the celebration lies something quieter, something sacred. You can feel it if you stand still and close your eyes, that sense of the world breathing in perfect rhythm. The wind through the grass, the warmth on your skin, the faint vibration of the earth as light meets stone. This is the language the builders spoke. Not words, but balance. They didn't just measure time, they participated in it. Think of what that means. At a time when survival consumed every waking hour, when winters starved villages and summers scorched fields, people still looked up. They looked beyond hunger, beyond cold, beyond fear, and decided to carve eternity into rock. They must have believed that to understand the sky was to be part of it. Each stone became a chapter in that belief. The outer circle marked the horizon of the world, the broad path of the sun. The inner horseshoe mirrored its arc through the sky. The altar stone received its light like a page receiving ink. And beneath it all, buried deep in the chalk, were the bones of their ancestors, the silent witnesses to every sunrise. This was not coincidence. It was cosmology. When the sun struck the altar, it illuminated not just the present but the past, light falling on the dead as a promise of renewal. The builders didn't separate life and death, earth and sky. They wove them together, one endless circle. Perhaps that's why the monument still feels alive, because it was never meant to be static. It was designed to move with the heavens, to remind anyone standing here that they too are part of the pattern. The sun continues to rise. The shadows shift. By midday, the light pours through gaps between stones, scattering like gold dust across the plain. The grass glows. The air hums with heat. You walk slowly around the circle, tracing its perimeter. Each turn reveals a new angle, a new relationship between shadow and brightness. The stones become frames through which the world is seen, 1,000 windows on time itself. And then, as the sun begins its descent, the light changes. It becomes softer, warmer, edged with amber. You can almost feel the earth sigh again. When the final rays slip through the western gap and touch the altar stone once more, the circle closes. Day returns to night. The pattern completes. The people gather their things, extinguish their fires, and begin the slow walk home. The smoke from their torches twists upward, merging with the last threads of sunset. Behind them, the stones fade into silhouette, black teeth against a burning sky. But the alignment remains. Tomorrow the sun will rise slightly differently, as it always does. And the monument will catch it, record it, remember it. That was its purpose, to hold memory in stone. Thousands of years from now, others will stand here, trying to decode its meaning. They will measure angles, chart alignments, write theories and papers. They will give it names: solar observatory, temple, calendar. All true. All incomplete. Because what the builders created was more than function. It was feeling. A living conversation between human and horizon. You look once more to the altar stone, now cooling in the dusk. The shadows of the sarsen stretch long over it, like hands reaching for the fading light. You realize, standing there, that this architecture isn't about walls or weight or stone. It's about connection, the act of finding order in chaos, rhythm in time, hope in the endless return of the sun. The wind softens. The mist begins to roll in again from the west. The last birds wheel across the sky, calling faintly. The world darkens, but gently, like a deep breath released. And as the night closes around the monument, you can still feel the warmth lingering on the stones, faint and steady, as though they remember every dawn they have ever seen. The stars emerge, sharp, patient, infinite. And with their light, a new question stirs in your mind, one the builders themselves must have asked as they watched the sun give way to the heavens. Was this a temple, or a calendar? Or perhaps both, a place where faith and knowledge were never separate, where measuring the universe was the same as worshipping it? The answer waits in the darkness, just beyond the horizon. And as the wind moves softly through the stones, you take a step toward it, following the path where sunlight meets shadow, where faith becomes geometry, and where silence begins to speak again. The night deepens. The plain cools. And somewhere, faint but steady, the rhythm of drums begins again, not of celebration now, but of questioning. You listen. And follow. The mystery is far from over. You are walking toward the question that has no single answer. The line between temple and calendar is about to blur. Night drapes itself across the plain like a vast, breathing cloak. The last streaks of sunset fade to ash, and the stones become silhouettes, black against the bruised blue sky. A chill rides the air. The grasses whisper in low, restless tones, bowing under the weight of dew. You stand at the center of the circle, surrounded by shadow. The warmth of the sun still lingers faintly on the altar stone beneath your fingertips, a ghost of heat absorbed through the long day. Beyond it, the first stars appear, one, then another, then 100 more. They bloom into being like slow embers in an infinite fire. The air is utterly still. It's here, in this quiet between worlds, after sunlight, before sleep, that the question begins to take shape. Was this place a temple, or a calendar? For centuries, scholars have asked it. Yet as the stars pulse overhead, you begin to sense the answer isn't a choice at all. It's a circle, much like the one you're standing in. The ancients who built Stonehenge didn't divide their world the way we do. To them, the sacred and the scientific were not opposites. They were twins. Two reflections of the same truth, that the universe moved by rhythm, and rhythm meant meaning. Look upward. The sky is alive with slow motion. The moon glides along its silver path, the constellations drift. You notice how the stones frame certain points of light, not by accident, but design. The gaps between the uprights are windows, and each one captures something specific: the rising of a star, the tilt of the sun, the position of the moon in its long, complex cycle. To us, these are measurements. To them, they were messages. When the moon reached its furthest north, or when the Pleiades shimmered in their winter place, they saw not numbers but moments, appointments with the divine. The cosmos wasn't something to study, it was something to join. You kneel beside the altar stone and trace your fingers over its rough surface. In the faint starlight, it looks almost like water frozen in motion. Every pit, every groove is a record, not of writing, but of watching. Maybe they stood here too, thousands of years ago, after the fires burned low, their faces tilted toward the sky. They would have seen the same stars you see now, Vega, Deneb, Sirius, each one flickering like a heartbeat in the endless dark. They didn't yet know of galaxies or gravity, but they knew enough to build a map you can still stand inside. The wind stirs. The grasses ripple like the surface of a dark sea. You imagine the sound of drums, slow, distant, rolling across the plain. Not a performance, but a pulse, a way of marking time. In that rhythm lies the truth. Stonehenge was both a temple and a calendar. Its purpose was not to separate worship from measurement, but to unite them. It was the meeting point between the two oldest human instincts, the need to understand and the need to revere. The builders must have seen no contradiction in that. When they tracked the solstice sun, they weren't charting for curiosity's sake. They were tracing the body of a god. When they noted the return of light after the longest night, they weren't simply marking an agricultural season. They were witnessing resurrection. For them, to measure the sky was to pray. You can feel that realization settle into you, slow and steady, like warmth spreading through cold hands. The air grows quieter still, the silence deep enough to hear your own breathing. Somewhere to the north, the faint call of an owl carries through the darkness, soft, mournful, eternal. Your eyes adjust to the dim light, and the shapes of the stones emerge again, massive, immutable, but somehow gentle now. You begin to see their design in a new way. The great outer circle, a ring of day, the domain of the sun. The inner horseshoe, a crescent of night, the realm of the moon. And between them, this space where you stand, balanced between opposites. The builders created harmony out of tension. The heavens turn. The earth answers. The stones keep the beat. Somewhere beyond the horizon, dawn is still hours away. But you can already feel it, a faint stirring, the slow tilting of the earth's face toward light. The monument senses it too. Every edge and opening seems to shift with anticipation, as though aware that its purpose soon renews. You walk slowly along the inner ring. Beneath your feet, the chalk glows faintly in the moonlight, white as bone. You stop beside one of the taller sarsens and lay a hand against its surface. The stone is cold, but its texture feels almost human, rough, warm in its roughness, as if holding memory. Archaeologists once uncovered traces of pigment here, flecks of red ochre, perhaps once painted across the stones. It's hard to imagine now, but once this place might have blazed with color under firelight, red and gold flickering across surfaces, shadows dancing, the air thick with smoke and song. The circle wasn't just geometry, it was theater, a cosmic stage where sunlight, moonlight, and human light performed together. Maybe the builders understood something we've forgotten, that the sacred doesn't live in stillness alone, but in movement, in cycles, returns, repetitions. In knowing that day will follow night, and life will follow death. You take another step back and let your gaze travel across the plain. In every direction, faint humps rise from the earth, burial mounds, processional ways, ghostly outlines of vanished timber circles. Stonehenge was never alone. It was part of a landscape designed for ritual and reflection, a vast complex of meaning spread across miles. By day, it was a calendar of light. By night, a temple of stars. Each had its season, its role in the greater design. At midwinter, when the nights were longest and the world seemed half asleep, people came from across the land. They brought their dead, carried in wrapped bundles, and laid them in the surrounding mounds. Fires burned in the circle. The sun, though weak, would set exactly between the great stones to the southwest, a promise that warmth would return. And 6 months later, at midsummer, they returned to witness its full strength, the great arc of dawn spilling through the heel stone, flooding the altar with gold. Life reborn. Death and rebirth, darkness and light, calculation and faith, all part of one seamless rhythm. You realize, standing here, that this monument was not built for the people. It was built with them, each generation adding a layer of meaning, a refinement of design. Some would come here to mark planting or harvest, others to mourn or to heal. But all came to stand between sky and soil, to feel themselves part of something that moved with precision and purpose. A temple, a calendar, a compass for the soul. The moon climbs higher now, sailing between two lintels. Its light slides across the ground, catching on the chalk, painting pale rivers that shimmer faintly like veins of silver. The stones cast long, angular shadows, overlapping like clock hands frozen at midnight. If you listen closely, you can almost hear it, the sound of time itself, moving slowly through stone. It isn't the tick of seconds or hours. It's deeper, the slow pulse of seasons, the breath of generations. Each solstice, each equinox, each cycle of the moon, all etched into the shape of this circle. When the wind passes through the openings, it creates a soft tone, a sigh that rises and fades, like a chord struck in the dark. You imagine the builders listening, noticing how every breeze has its own voice, how every direction sings slightly differently. Perhaps they tuned their monument to the world around it. You step back into the center once more. The stars have shifted almost imperceptibly. The moon has climbed higher still. The plain stretches outward, vast and unending. And you realize something simple and profound. The people who built this didn't separate knowledge from reverence because, to them, knowing was a form of worship. They studied the heavens not to control them, but to belong to them. The first astronomers were priests. The first priests were astronomers. They looked up and saw patterns, and in those patterns they saw grace. Stonehenge is proof of that union. Science carved into faith, faith shaped into science. The question of temple or calendar dissolves. It was always both. A machine for measuring eternity. The night deepens. The world hushes. The last drift of mist coils through the stones like smoke. Far to the east, the horizon begins to pale again, a soft prelude to dawn. You watch as the faintest blush of light returns, the first thread of gold creeping upward. The stones stand ready, as they have for 5,000 years, to greet the new sun and start the cycle again. You exhale, and your breath ghosts in the cold air. The circle around you is unchanged, ancient, eternal, alive. Temple or calendar? You smile. Maybe it was never meant to be either. Maybe it was meant to be both, or perhaps something even simpler, a mirror. A mirror of the universe itself, built so that every person who stood here could see not just the heavens above, but the rhythm within themselves, the same pulse, the same cycle, the same light waiting to return. The wind brushes past your ear, whispering through the stones. The sky brightens by imperceptible degrees, and as the first gold spills once again across the plain, you feel the old rhythm resume, the dialogue between shadow and fire, earth and sky, time and eternity. The people who built it are gone, but their question remains, echoing quietly across the centuries. When you measure the sun, are you worshipping it, or remembering it? The light climbs higher, washing the world in amber. You turn slowly, following its path, and the stones seem to move with you, their edges glowing, their shadows lengthening, their silence alive. The day has begun again. The cycle turns. And with it, the story continues, toward the people who lived among these stones, who gave them meaning, who carried their mysteries in flesh and blood. The world is waking, and it's time to meet them. The morning unfolds softly, like parchment unrolling beneath a golden brush. The mist thins and retreats toward the horizon, revealing the plain in its full breadth, a patchwork of grass and low scrubs stretching under a sky the color of pale linen. Dew glints on every blade. The air smells faintly of chalk, smoke, and wet earth. You are not alone anymore. All around the circle, figures begin to move, shadows at first, then forms taking shape in the growing light. They walk slowly, reverently, their feet pressing quiet tracks into the damp ground. Some carry baskets. Some lead dogs with narrow faces and watchful eyes. Children follow behind, their laughter soft, easily swallowed by the wind. These are the people of Stonehenge, the ones who built it, tended it, and lived their lives in its shadow. They left no writing, no chronicles carved into stone. But their presence lingers in every flake of flint, every post hole, every trace of ash buried beneath the grass. You can almost feel them as they pass you, the heat of breath, the roughness of wool against your arm, the smell of smoke clinging to skin. To most of us, they are ghosts of prehistory, vague and faceless. But look closer, and you begin to see their humanity, bright and familiar beneath the ancient dust. They are farmers and herders, craftsmen and mothers, healers and dreamers. Their skin is browned by the sun and streaked with chalk dust. Their hair is bound in braids, sometimes threaded with bone or shell. The lines on their faces are not just from age but from weather, years spent under open skies. They speak a language we no longer know, yet their gestures are universal. A nod of greeting, a hand resting briefly on another's shoulder, a shared glance that needs no translation. When the work of the day begins, it is almost ritualistic. A group of men kneel near the outer bank, chipping flakes from blocks of flint. The sharp, rhythmic tink of stones striking stone echoes faintly through the air. Sparks leap occasionally as they fashion blades, scrapers, and arrowheads, tools both practical and ceremonial. The women nearby spin thread from wool, their fingers quick and sure. The spindle whirs softly, a heartbeat of domestic life beneath the immensity of the sky. Children chase one another between low huts, laughing, the sound high and fleeting. Smoke rises from fires tended in hollows of turf, thin spirals carrying the scent of roasted grain and fat. In the distance, cattle graze, their horns gleaming like crescents of bone in the morning light. This world feels raw, yes, but not primitive. It is deliberate, tuned, alive. Each task flows into the next, a seamless choreography of necessity and reverence. To live here is to live close to both hunger and wonder, to wake with the sun, to read the seasons by the tilt of light, to sleep with the knowledge that survival depends on the generosity of the earth and the predictability of the sky. And at the center of it all stands the monument, vast, serene, unyielding. The people do not think of it as ancient, because for them, it is new, alive, an ongoing creation. Each generation adds something: a ditch deepened, a stone set, a ceremony refined. The monument evolves as they do, its meaning shifting with the years. Archaeologists have found evidence of feasting on these plains, thousands of animal bones buried in shallow pits, their edges scorched by fire. Pig jaws split open for marrow. Cattle bones cracked for fat. Charred pottery fragments still stained with the residue of stews rich with herbs and wild greens. Imagine the sound of it: laughter, drums, the calls of traders arriving from distant valleys. Torches flickering in the dusk. Stonehenge wasn't only a site of solemn ritual. It was also a place of gathering, a communal heartbeat. People came not just to worship, but to belong. From the nearby settlement at Dington Walls, a vast timber circle and village discovered by archaeologists, evidence tells us that thousands once lived here during the monument's height. Circular houses with walls of wattle and daub, thatched roofs, and hearths glowing with perpetual flame. You can almost see it now, spreading out beyond the stones, a city of tents and huts alive with life. Smoke rising like banners. The smell of roasting meat thick in the air. Dogs barking, people shouting greetings, songs rising and falling as the night takes hold. This was not a lonely monument standing in isolation. It was part of a living landscape, a network of processions, feasts, and rituals tied to the turning of the sun. At midwinter, when the world seemed locked in ice, people traveled from across the island, bringing offerings. Some carried decorated antlers, others crafted beads of amber or jet. They led herds of pigs, fattened for months, to be sacrificed and shared. The fires burned bright enough to paint the stones orange against the black sky. And when dawn broke, the circle blazed with light, a signal that spring would come again. But not all who came left. In shallow graves nearby, archaeologists have found the remains of men and women who died young, their bones marked with signs of disease and healed injury. Some were laid to rest with care, wrapped in hides, surrounded by offerings of meat and pottery. Others were cremated, their ashes placed in small pits around the henge. This was a place of healing as well as death. The bluestones, brought from far-off Wales, were believed to hold sacred energy, power drawn from the earth itself. People may have come seeking that power, hoping to be cured, or at least to die in a place where the boundary between worlds felt thin. You can feel that thinness even now, standing here. The air is dense, like breath caught between one word and the next. Every sound seems magnified: the rustle of grass, the distant call of a raven, the slow beat of your own heart. Perhaps that's what they sought, not immortality, but meaning, a sense that their lives, brief and hard though they were, touched something eternal. A woman passes you, carrying a clay jar against her hip. Her hair is streaked with gray, her eyes bright as flint. She pauses to glance at the stones, as if checking their place in the sky. For a moment you catch her expression, not fear, not awe, but familiarity. The kind of look one gives a trusted companion. Because for her, the stones are companions, guardians, witnesses to the rhythm of her days. In the evenings, when the fires burn low, the people gather around storytellers who speak of how the stones came to be. Some say they were gifts from gods who walked the earth when the world was young. Others whisper that the stones were once alive, ancient beings turned to rock for daring to reach the sky. The myths shift and change, but all share the same heart: this place is alive, and to stand within it is to stand inside the breath of creation itself. When the storytellers finish, the people fall quiet. The fire pops, sending a spray of sparks into the air. Overhead, the stars shimmer, reflected in 1,000 pairs of eyes. You realize, as you watch them, that they are not so different from you. Their questions are your questions. Their longing for connection, their fascination with the heavens, their need to make sense of the vast unknown, it all still lives in the human heart. The tools change, the cities grow, the world fills with noise, but that same wonder remains. The people of Stonehenge understood something essential, that the world is both larger and smaller than we can grasp. Larger, because it stretches beyond measure. Smaller, because it fits within a single circle of stones. By day, they farmed, hunted, laughed, and raised children. By night, they stood here, just as you do now, and looked to the sky, wondering who they were in the grand turning of it all. The sun climbs higher. The plain shimmers with heat. The people begin to fade, their voices softening into the wind, their shapes dissolving into mist. Only traces remain, footprints in chalk, fragments of pottery, a broken bead glinting faintly in the grass. But the stones endure. They remember. They remember the laughter, the chants, the smoke of feasts, the footsteps of those who lived and died within their shadow. They remember the pulse of drums and the songs of healing. You close your eyes, and for a moment, the echo of their lives still hums beneath your feet, the deep vibration of human effort and belief layered into the soil. When you open them again, the plain is empty once more. Only the monument remains, its silence rich with memory. The people are gone. But their story continues, carved in stone, written in light. And as the day bends toward dusk again, your eyes drift to the horizon. Beyond the circle lies more, a vast landscape of barrows and paths, a hidden web of meaning stretching outward like the veins of a leaf. Stonehenge was never just a monument. It was the heart of something larger, a sacred geography, a living world of connection between the living and the dead. The plain calls you onward. And as the light softens into ember and shadow, you begin to walk, leaving behind the stones for now, following the faint traces of ancient paths leading outward. The journey doesn't end here. It widens, into the hills, the mounds, the unseen lines that tie this place to every horizon. The sacred plain awaits. The air cools as the afternoon wanes. The stones behind you cast long shadows that stretch like fingers across the grass, dark lines reaching toward the horizon. You walk slowly away from the circle, each step sinking slightly into the damp soil. The hum of wind through the monument fades, replaced by a wider, deeper silence, the kind that lives between hills, where even sound seems to travel in reverence. The land unfolds around you. The Salisbury Plain. Broad, rolling, unhurried, a sea of grass and chalk stretching as far as the eye can see. From above, it must look like a great green tide frozen mid-swell, dotted with strange ripples and rings. Some are natural, carved by centuries of wind and rain. Others are not. They rise in deliberate mounds, smooth and domed, some small as a cottage, others large as cathedrals. Burial barrows. Tumuli. Silent hills raised by ancient hands. The people of Stonehenge may be gone, but their presence still breathes through this landscape. They didn't just build a monument, they transformed an entire world into a map of the sacred. Every mound, every avenue, every curve of earth tells a fragment of the same story. You pause at the crest of a gentle slope. Below, the plain glows in late sunlight, and you can see them, hundreds of these earth mounds scattered across the land, their silhouettes soft against the golden grass. It's as though the dead themselves have risen from the soil, choosing to lie here where the sun and sky meet in perpetual conversation. The wind brushes your face. The smell of grass and distant rain fills your lungs. Somewhere, a skylark climbs into the air, its song rising clear and sharp. For a moment, the whole plain feels alive, not empty, not silent, but listening. You begin to walk again, following a faint track that winds between two ridges. The path is older than memory. Beneath your feet, the chalk gleams white where the soil has worn thin, the same chalk that built the henge, the same that forms the bones of this land. It feels as though you are walking through the skeleton of the earth itself. As you descend into a shallow valley, the sound changes. The wind hushes. The air grows still. Ahead, one of the larger barrows rises from the plain, a long, elegant mound with sides steeped in grass and wildflowers. The ground at its base is littered with small white stones, fragments of chalk placed there long ago by hands that believed in their power to protect or remember. You climb the slope carefully, feeling the incline steepen beneath you. At the top, the view opens in every direction, a rolling sea of green and gold. In the distance, Stonehenge stands small but luminous, its stones glinting faintly in the lowering sun. From here, you can see how the monument fits into the land. It's not isolated. It's part of a pattern, lines, circles, pathways that connect it to other sacred sites. Some visible, others buried beneath centuries of soil. Together they form a web of meaning, a sacred geometry sprawling across the plain. Archaeologists have traced processional avenues leading from Stonehenge to the River Avon. Broad, shallow roads paved with chalk, still faintly visible under the grass. The living would have walked those routes carrying torches, songs echoing across the hills. They led their dead that way too, their bodies wrapped in hides or cloth, carried on sledges to the river's edge. The Avon shimmered then, as it does now, slow, wide, reflective as glass. They say the dead were ferried across its waters toward another monument, Woodhenge, a circle of timber posts long since decayed. Stone for the eternal, wood for the fleeting. One for the dead, one for the living. Together they formed a conversation about the cycle of existence, decay and endurance, time and eternity. You stand in the wind at the top of the barrow and picture it, a procession winding across the landscape, torches flickering like fireflies, songs rising to meet the stars. The sound of drums mingling with the murmur of the river. The stones gleaming faintly in the distance, waiting like a beacon. This whole landscape was alive with purpose, each mound a memory, each path a prayer. And perhaps that is why they built here, because the plain itself was already sacred long before the first ditch was dug, long before the first sarsen stood. The chalk beneath your feet is ancient, formed from the shells of countless sea creatures that lived when this land was ocean. Every grain of it holds the ghost of a world that came before. Maybe the builders sensed that. Maybe they felt that this white earth carried its own kind of holiness, the bones of time itself. You kneel and press your hand into the soil. It's cool, soft, faintly damp. When you lift your fingers, a trace of white powder clings to them. Chalk fine as dust, luminous in the fading light. The same material they dug to make the henge, to mark boundaries, to paint bodies during ritual. It's the color of bone, of moonlight, of memory. The people of Stonehenge must have believed that to walk this land was to walk through the skin of the gods. Even now, 5,000 years later, the feeling remains. The wind shifts again, bringing with it a faint scent of rain and something older, the smell of lichen and time. You look toward the horizon and see clouds gathering, a slow gray tide rolling in from the west. The light over the plain deepens to bronze. You descend from the barrow and follow the line of the old avenue, the processional path that once connected Stonehenge to the river. The ground dips and rises beneath your steps, uneven but deliberate, like a memory half buried under centuries. Along the way, you pass more mounds, smaller ones this time. Some have collapsed into shallow rings. Others remain proud and smooth, their edges softened by grass. Beneath each one lies a person, or many, their bones curled in the fetal position, facing the rising sun. It's easy to imagine them still sleeping, their dreams carried by the wind. The rain begins as a whisper, fine, drifting, almost weightless. The droplets darken the soil, turning the chalk gray, making the air smell sharp and clean. The sound of it mingles with the sigh of the wind, the rustle of grass, the faint hum of unseen insects. You pull your cloak closer around your shoulders. Or maybe it's just your imagination that does, and keep walking. When the path levels again, the land opens before you into a wide clearing where the grass lies short and silvered by rain. In its center stands a ring of small stones, half buried, nearly forgotten. Their tops barely break the surface now, but you can sense their pattern, another circle echoing the great one to the north. How many circles once stood here? How many echoes of the same dream! The people of Stonehenge weren't content with a single monument. They filled the landscape with reflections, smaller henges, timber circles, alignments of posts that marked celestial events or ceremonial routes. The entire plain became a vast calendar, a theater of ritual and memory. To modern eyes, it looks like mystery upon mystery. To them, it was home. You stand in the rain until the clouds begin to thin. Slowly, sunlight returns, soft and fractured, spilling through gaps in the clouds in long golden shafts. The wet grass gleams. The air is heavy with scent and sound, the living pulse of earth after rain. Somewhere far off, perhaps in imagination, you can hear the low roll of drums again, echoing faintly from where the great stones stand. The rhythm carries across the plain like a heartbeat, steady and ancient. You turn back toward that sound. The stones are barely visible on the horizon, softened by mist, but they draw you all the same. The mounds around you seem to lean toward them, as if bowing to their elder sibling. This plain, this sacred geography, is not just a place. It is an idea made visible, a world built from the understanding that life and death are not separate paths but two directions on the same road. Every burial mound faces sunrise. Every avenue leads to the water. Every stone reaches upward toward the heavens. It is all one system, one story told in the language of the earth. And you, standing here centuries later, are still part of it, one more heartbeat in a chain of endless ones. The clouds break completely now, and the light pours over the landscape like liquid gold. The stones in the distance flash white for an instant, their surfaces gleaming as if lit from within. The mounds glow softly under the sun's return. The entire plain becomes a mirror of light. You realize you've been walking inside a memory that never ends, a ritual so vast it includes the horizon itself. The people are gone. The fires are ash. The songs are silence. And yet, somehow, the sacred plain still breathes. The wind rises again, cool and clean. It moves through the grass with a sound like whispers, 1,000 voices layered into one. You close your eyes and listen, and for a heartbeat you could swear you hear them, the builders, the mourners, the dreamers, still singing their slow hymn to the turning of the world. You open your eyes. The light is fading again, softening into the muted blue of early evening. The stones on the horizon stand dark against the glow. You begin to walk back toward them, toward the heart of the circle that started it all. The wind follows you, tugging gently at your sleeves, carrying with it the scent of wet grass and old fire. The path beneath your feet glows faintly in the last light, chalk white, ancient, unbroken. You are returning not to where the story began, but to where it deepens. The plain behind you hums like a great, sleeping heart. Ahead, the stones wait in silence, ready to speak again. And somewhere within that silence, faint but steady, you can almost hear it, the sound of drums through fog, voices rising with the dawn, a festival of the sun waiting to begin once more. The sound of the past is coming closer. The path climbs gently back toward the stones, white chalk gleaming under the bruised sky. Evening has gathered, but it has not yet hardened into night. The light is that strange, forgiving gray between worlds, the hour when every sound seems nearer, every scent sharper, every memory awake. The wind has quieted. You can hear your own footsteps, soft and rhythmic on the damp earth. And beneath them, fainter still, another rhythm, too regular to be the wind, too deep to be the heartbeat in your chest. A low thump, distant, steady. At first you think it's thunder, rolling across the horizon. But no storm comes. The sky is clean, the air still. The sound is older than weather. It's the sound of drums. You pause and listen. The rhythm carries through the air like the pulse of the plain itself. Slow, then quick, then slow again, a pattern shaped by hands you cannot see. It grows stronger with each step you take toward the stones, until the space between past and present thins like paper. Then, all at once, the centuries fold. The plain awakens. Torches flare along the ridge, their flames bending in the wind. Figures move between them, dozens, then hundreds, men and women dressed in hides and wool, their faces painted with chalk. The air fills with the smell of smoke, of sweat, of roasting grain. You are standing in the midst of an ancient night. The drums are real now. A circle of drummers sits near the outer bank of the henge, hands striking stretched hide in perfect rhythm. The sound isn't loud, it doesn't need to be. It's deep, resonant, alive, vibrating through your ribs. Voices join in, low at first, then rising. Chants without words, syllables born of breath and heartbeat. The crowd moves as one, their feet thudding softly on the ground. The air hums with energy, thick enough to feel against your skin. You turn slowly, and the sight before you is breathtaking. Stonehenge stands alight with fire. Dozens of torches set in rings, their glow rippling across the gray faces of the Sarsens. Shadows dance up the stones, then leap and fold as the flames flicker. Smoke twists toward the stars, fragrant with resin and fat. Somewhere nearby, water boils in a clay pot. The smell of herbs, mint, fennel, crushed meadowsweet, drifts through the air. The people move like a tide around the monument. Some dance, their arms lifted to the sky. Others sit in quiet reverence, faces tilted upward as if listening for an answer from the stars. Children dart between the adults, laughing, their hair catching the light. The sound swells. The drums, the chants, the crackle of fire, all folding together into one continuous voice. You realize, standing here, that this isn't just ritual. It's memory performed. Every beat is a story retold, every step a word in a language that has no alphabet. And at its heart, the stones themselves sing. When the wind rushes between them, it catches in the gaps and hollows, creating tones that weave through the music, a ghostly harmony. You can hear it now, clear and shimmering, as though the monument is answering the people who built it. For a moment, it feels as if you are standing inside an instrument, a vast drum whose walls are made of sky and stone. The rhythm changes. The drummers slow. The voices deepen. The dancers stop, turning to face east. A hush falls, heavy and complete. Even the wind pauses. Far on the horizon, the first faint silver of dawn appears. The people kneel. Smoke curls upward from the fires, coiling like the breath of the plain. A priest, or maybe just a leader, steps forward, his cloak made of woven wool, its hem darkened with ash. He holds a carved antler in his hand and raises it toward the light. His voice carries across the field, not in words you understand, but in rhythm and tone, a sound half human, half elemental. The crowd responds, a rising murmur that swells and fades like a tide. Behind them, the torches gutter and die, one by one, until only the faint glow of dawn remains. Then it happens. The sun breaks the horizon. Its light spills straight through the line of stones, golden and sudden, igniting the altar in fire. The people cry out, not in fear, but in exultation. Some weep. Some laugh. Others stand perfectly still, faces bathed in light, as though they are watching the birth of the world. The sound returns, drums again, faster now, joyous. The chants become song. You feel the vibration in the ground beneath your feet, in the air against your skin. The whole plain seems to tremble with it. You understand, suddenly, that what you're hearing isn't music in the way we think of it. It's communication, between the living and the world around them. The rhythm of the drums mirrors the rhythm of the human heart. The song matches the rising of the sun. The fires echo the warmth that floods the land each morning. This is what it means to live in harmony with the cosmos. The people aren't worshipping the sun, they're conversing with it. The monument is their language, the drum their punctuation, the light their reply. For a few breaths, you are part of it, woven into that ancient dialogue. You can feel the sound in your bones, a reminder that music existed before instruments, that rhythm was the first language of humankind. And then, slowly, the moment passes. The sun climbs higher, washing the plain in full light. The fires burn low. The crowd begins to scatter, their songs dissolving into laughter, chatter, the soft bleating of goats. The drums fall silent. The wind returns. Smoke drifts upward in lazy ribbons. You blink, and the centuries shift again. The people fade. The torches vanish. Only the stones remain, their surfaces bright and warm under the newborn sun. The air is filled once more with the simpler sounds of the present, the rustle of grass, the chirp of birds, the sigh of wind. But something lingers, a resonance, faint but undeniable. If you close your eyes, you can still hear it, that deep, steady thrum that seems to come not from outside but from within the earth itself. The sound of the past never truly left. It's woven into the soil, the air, the memory of this place. Every visitor who stands here adds their own note to the chord, footsteps, whispers, the click of a camera shutter, modern echoes joining ancient ones. Stonehenge still sings, though most no longer know how to listen. You walk among the stones again, running your fingers over their rough, sun-warmed surfaces. The air tastes faintly of salt and dust. Somewhere to the west, a storm is gathering, its thunder a slow roll over the horizon. The sound is almost the same as the ancient drums, low, rhythmic, patient. It's as if the sky itself is remembering. You look up, and for a heartbeat, you imagine the scene as it once was, fires burning against a dark sky, drums calling across the plain, voices rising in unity. You can almost smell the smoke again, hear the laughter, feel the rhythm of feet on the earth. Then the vision fades, leaving only the steady breath of the wind. The sound of the past is never gone, it's only quieter now. But it waits, in the spaces between stones, in the hollows where fire once burned, in the air that still trembles when the sun passes through. The plain falls silent again. The storm rolls closer. The first drops of rain strike the stones with a hollow sound, like fingertips on a drum. One, then another, then 1,000. A soft percussion that echoes across the land. You smile. The rhythm has returned, not from human hands this time, but from the sky. The rain falls harder. The air fills with mist and music. And for one long, quiet moment, the world feels whole again. The song of the past is playing still. You need only listen. The rain eases into mist again, a fine silver veil drifting over the plain. Drops cling to the edges of the stones, trembling there before sliding down their faces like tears. The air smells clean now, fresh chalk and wet grass, smoke long gone, the tang of thunder still ghosting on the wind. You walk slowly between the monoliths. The last echo of the drums has faded, but the rhythm remains somewhere deep inside you, like a heartbeat remembered. The stones stand still, shining faintly under the pale wash of dawn. For a while, there is only silence, and then another kind of sound begins to rise, a murmur not from the earth this time, but from the long corridor of human memory. Stories, whispers, legends. For thousands of years, people have looked at these same stones and asked the same question you have: who built this, and why? When the true builders were already ancient, others arrived, new peoples, new gods, new tongues, and each generation filled the silence with its own answers. Myths became mortar. Belief became the scaffolding that held the unknown together. The earliest storytellers, the ones who found this place already old, called it the work of giants. They said the stones were carried here from the far edge of the world by creatures so tall they could wade through oceans. The marks on the sarcens, those long, vertical grooves, were said to be the giants' fingerprints, pressed into the rock while it was still soft. Later, in the Iron Age, another people came, Celts, with their bronze torques and carved gods. They built no new circles, but when they saw this one, they claimed it. They called it a place of their ancestors, a temple of the Druids, those robed priests who moved through forests and meadows, reading the will of the gods in oak leaves and starlight. You can almost see them now, walking through the mist. Figures draped in white linen, wreaths of holly on their heads, staffs of yew in their hands. They move between the stones with slow, deliberate grace. One raises a hand to the rising sun, another scatters handfuls of herbs on the ground. Their voices are low and measured, speaking the ancient language of ritual. The Druids believed that all things were alive, the stones, the trees, the rivers, even the wind that carried their prayers. To them, the world was a single living being, and to harm one part was to wound the whole. Standing here, among the breath and stillness of Stonehenge, you can almost understand that way of seeing. The monument feels sentient, aware. It listens. In truth, the Druids came long after Stonehenge was built, separated by nearly 2,000 years. But that doesn't seem to matter. Legend has its own logic, and sometimes it's truer than history. The Druids saw something sacred here, and in recognizing it, they kept the place alive. Roman writers described them with both fascination and fear. They called them philosophers, astronomers, magicians. They claimed the Druids knew secrets of the stars, that they could stop armies with a word, summon storms, speak to the dead. Perhaps, in their own way, they could. Knowledge and magic were the same thing then. To know the right day to plant a seed or the hour when a shadow would vanish, that was power enough to seem divine. You imagine a midsummer morning in their age. The plain is greener, wilder, but the stones are the same. A circle of Druids stands in silence, waiting for the first ray of sunlight to pierce the horizon. When it comes, they raise their arms, and 1,000 voices chant the same phrase, echoing through the air. The sound rolls like thunder over the hills. To the Romans who watched from afar, it must have looked like sorcery. To the Druids, it was worship in its purest form. As you walk between the stones, you realize how easily legend grows from admiration. The Druids inherited not the monument itself, but its aura, the mystery that clings to any place too vast for one meaning. And once they were gone, the storytellers of later centuries took up the same habit, filling the silence with wonder. In the Middle Ages, a new myth took root. A chronicler named Geoffrey of Monmouth, writing in the 12th century, told that Stonehenge was built by Merlin, the wizard of King Arthur's court. According to Geoffrey, the stones had once stood in Ireland, forming a magical circle called the Giant's Dance. When a great British king wished to build a memorial for his fallen warriors, Merlin advised him to bring those enchanted stones across the sea. With a spell and a wave of his staff, the stones rose into the air, sailed over the water, and landed here, perfectly arranged upon the plain. It's a beautiful image, magic and memory braided together. And though we know it isn't true, part of you wants to believe it anyway. Because the story says something about the feeling these stones inspire. They seem too deliberate, too impossible, to be the work of ordinary hands. Merlin's legend, in its way, is a love letter to the human need for wonder. Even now, on certain nights, people come here seeking that same enchantment. They bring drums and candles, garlands of ivy, ribbons fluttering in the wind. They call themselves modern Druids, though their faith is woven from fragments and dreams. When the midsummer sun rises, they lift their hands and sing, and for a few brief moments, the distance between past and present disappears. You can hear them, faintly, even now, the echoes of future voices joining the old. The sound moves through the air like smoke. The melody has changed, but the rhythm remains the same. The need to celebrate the turning of the sun, to stand in awe before something larger than ourselves, never left us. It only changed its language. You pause beside the heelstone, that tall sentinel that marks the gateway to the henge. Rainwater pools in the shallow hollows along its side. In one of those pools, the sky reflects back at you, gray clouds moving slowly across blue. The reflection trembles when the wind stirs, and you realize how fragile all our stories are. They change shape as easily as that image in the water, and yet the desire behind them stays the same. Every culture that came here, Bronze Age farmers, Celtic priests, Roman soldiers, medieval monks, looked at these stones and saw themselves reflected. They used them as a mirror for their own questions, their own fears, their own faiths. Maybe that is the truest magic of all, not that Merlin moved the stones, but that they move us. They bend our imaginations toward mystery, toward storytelling, toward belief. You walk slowly around the circle, the rain now a soft drizzle. The air has the sweetness of wet grass and the faint metallic scent of the stones. The monument hums quietly in the wind, an ancient resonance that might once have been mistaken for the voice of gods. Somewhere in the distance, thunder murmurs again. The sound rolls over the hills and fades. The plain is empty once more, yet not alone. You can feel the centuries crowding close, the giants, the druids, the wizards, the nameless builders, all watching, all whispering their own versions of truth. The stories don't cancel each other out. They layer, like sediment on chalk, each one a different season of the same land. History is what remains when legend falls quiet. Legend is what remains when history forgets to speak. And both are alive here. The mist thickens again, soft and luminous. The stones blur at their edges until they seem to float. The world feels half-dreamed. You close your eyes, listening, and in the hush between raindrops you hear that old rhythm once more, the slow, patient beat that started long before the first stone was raised and will go on long after the last story is told. It is the sound of belief itself. When you open your eyes, the rain has stopped. The plain gleams under a pale shaft of light breaking through the clouds. The stones glisten. The air smells new. You take a breath, feeling the weight of centuries settle lightly on your shoulders, not as burden, but as cloak. The druids are gone, the legends fade, but their purpose remains, to remind us that even silence can hold meaning, that even stones can keep memory. You turn toward the center of the circle once more. The light shifts, revealing a faint bluish tint in the smaller stones, the blue stones brought from distant mountains, the ones said to heal the sick and speak with the dead. Their story waits just ahead, deep in the cool hush of the coming twilight. The wind moves through the gaps again, carrying a note that hums low and clear, almost musical. And as you step closer, following that sound, you feel the next mystery gathering, the quiet promise of the healing stones and the secrets they still guard. The legend fades, but the wonder deepens. The journey continues. The rain has rinsed the air clean. Mist lifts in torn ribbons from the grass, and the stones glimmer like damp skin under a new sun. You walk toward the inner ring, where the smaller stones stand in a close, uneven circle. Blue stones, they call them, though in this light they are every color at once: slate gray, deep green, smoky violet, the faint sheen of silver where the surface catches the light. They seem quieter than the sarcens, less monumental, more intimate. You can imagine reaching your arms around one, pressing your cheek against its cool flank, feeling it hum faintly with something older than sound. These are not local stones. Their accents are foreign, their story a journey. They came from far to the west, from the Preseli hills of Wales, over rivers, forests, valleys, and sea. 200 kilometers, maybe more. How or why the builders chose them remains uncertain, but every legend agrees on one thing: these stones were different. People said they were alive, that they carried the pulse of the mountains they came from, the heartbeat of the world. You kneel beside one now, tracing the thin veins that run across its surface. They glint faintly, like threads of light caught inside the rock. In the old stories, those veins were said to be filled with power, the blood of the earth. If you touched them with reverence, the sickness in your body would quiet. If you slept beside them, your dreams would show you the cure. There is no proof, of course, only echoes, fragments of legend found in the soil. But still, the blue stones hold a reputation that even centuries cannot shake. You close your eyes, listening. The wind slides through the circle with a soft tone, higher than the hum of the great sarcens. It has a musical quality, almost tender, as though the air changes pitch as it passes these smaller, denser stones. Perhaps that sound itself was the healing, the vibration of air and time brushing across skin, reminding the living that they were part of something vast and continuous. Archaeologists found traces of gatherings here, ashes from fires, bones of animals butchered and eaten. They found fragments of human bone too, cremated, carefully placed near the bluestones. Some of those remains bore signs of illness, disease, injury, deformity. It's as if the dying came here to be healed, or to find peace if healing never came. You imagine the scene, the plain thick with people again, torches flickering against the stones, smoke carrying the smell of herbs, sage, juniper, sweet rush. Healers move among the crowd, their hands stained with clay and plant dyes, whispering incantations as they lay palms against fevered foreheads. Children are brought here, swaddled and silent. Old men carried on woven stretchers. Some leave walking, others do not. But all leave changed. The air itself seems charged with that memory, the mingling of hope and sorrow, faith and finality. The bluestones were not just objects, they were participants. People spoke to them, touched them, pressed their ailments into the cool surface as if transferring their pain into the rock. They poured water over them, drank it afterward, believing it absorbed the stone's power. To modern ears it sounds like superstition, but the instinct feels familiar. Haven't we all, at some moment, laid a hand against something solid, stone, tree, earth, when words were not enough? You walk slowly among them, your fingers brushing each in turn. Their surfaces are slick from rain, their edges softened by time. Some lean, some stand upright, others fallen. Together they form a circle within a circle, the heart of Stonehenge's heart. Legends say each of these stones once had a name, some known, some forgotten. In old Welsh tales, they were called the Glaeni na Drod, the blue stones of healing. The stories claimed they were stolen from a sacred mountain by a hero or a magician. When set in this circle, they retained their virtue. Anyone who bathed in water that had touched them would be made whole again. Others said the stones themselves were people. Ancient healers turned to rock to preserve their wisdom forever. Each line and groove on their surface a trace of their hands, their robes, their breath caught in transformation. The myths contradict each other, but all agree that these stones are not silent. They listen, they remember, they give. Standing here, it's easy to see why the stories endured. The air feels thicker between these stones, as if time itself slows. Every sound seems gentler, every movement deliberate. The circle feels enclosed but not confined, a place for the body to rest and the mind to open. You sit on the damp grass and let your eyes close. The wind moves lightly through your hair. Beneath you, the ground is cool, steady, immense. Somewhere beneath this soil lie the ashes of those who came seeking renewal. Perhaps the plain is still warmed by their faith. When you breathe in, the air tastes faintly metallic, as though the stones exhale. When you breathe out, your own breath feels answered. The stories say that in midsummer, when the air was thick and the grass high, healers would gather water from the river Avon before dawn and carry it in clay vessels to the henge. There they would pour it slowly over the bluestones until it ran in small rivulets into the earth. People would kneel, cup their hands, and drink. The water was said to carry the stone's energy, mingled with the light of the rising sun. To drink it was to drink the world renewed. You imagine that ceremony now, the soft splash of water, the hiss of steam as it hits the sun-warmed rock, the murmured prayers. The crowd waiting in silence, watching light shift through the mist, hoping for one more breath of strength. Healing in that world was never only a matter of flesh. It was harmony restored, body, spirit, earth, and sky returning to balance. The monument itself was the medicine. And maybe that's why the stones were moved so far, why the journey from Wales mattered. They carried the essence of a place already sacred, a fragment of distant mountains transplanted to this plain so that their power would live where the people did. It was a bridge between homelands, between tribes, between life and death. A modern geologist might say the bluestones are just dolerite and rhyolite, volcanic rock born of deep pressure. But that doesn't cancel their magic. It only deepens it. To think that something formed in fire, cooled for millions of years beneath the earth, could be touched by human hands and turned into a vessel of hope, that is its own miracle. The wind rises again, soft but persistent, threading through the ring. It makes a low, singing tone, higher than before, almost like a whisper. You stand and listen. It feels like the stones are breathing, each exhale shaping the air around them. The sound is neither comfort nor warning, it's recognition. You realize, perhaps the stones were never meant to heal in the way we understand it. They didn't promise to cure. They promised to connect, to remind the sick, the grieving, the weary, that they were not alone in their pain. The same earth that made them made you. The same wind that passed over them will carry your breath long after you're gone. There is solace in that kind of continuity, and sometimes solace is the truest healing of all. The mist thins, revealing the greater circle again beyond this inner ring. The Sarsens stand like sentinels, patient and bright. You walk between them, feeling the change in air, the blue stone's closeness giving way to openness, the wide horizon unfolding once more. Behind you, the smaller stones gleam like coals cooling in twilight. You look back once, and the light catches on one in particular, a single upright with a streak of quartz along its side. For an instant, it shines like lightning frozen in stone. Then the sun slips behind a cloud, and the glow fades. The air is quiet again. Only the sound of your own breathing and the low murmur of wind over grass. The healing stones rest where they have always been, unmoving, unbroken, watching. They have seen ages of sickness and recovery, birth and burial, belief and forgetting. Yet they remain, still offering their silent invitation, come closer. Touch. Remember. You exhale slowly and turn toward the open plain once more. The past stretches forward, pale and gleaming under the gray sky. Somewhere beyond the horizon, new questions wait. The mystery of why these particular stones were chosen, why brought so far, what secret meaning they still hold. You begin to walk again, the faint vibration of the blue stones following you like a pulse at your back. The plain opens ahead, vast and quiet. The next enigma is calling. The enigma of the blue stones themselves. The plain opens before you like a slow breath. Behind, the smaller stones fade into mist, their shapes blurring, their colors dissolving into the soft gray of distance. But even when they disappear from sight, you can still feel them. The hum remains, faint and steady, in the soles of your feet. The sound of stone remembering its journey. Because those blue stones, they did not belong here. They came from mountains that once drank the sea, from a land of storms and shadowed valleys far to the west, the Preseli Hills of Wales. 200 kilometers away, at least. A distance that, 5,000 years ago, might as well have been another world. And yet, somehow, they came. You walk along the edge of the great circle, where the grass is shorter and the earth shines chalk-white beneath your boots. The wind pushes at your back. Every step feels heavier, not with fatigue but with awe, as though you are tracing the ghost of that journey, step by impossible step. How did they do it? The question has haunted every scholar, every dreamer who ever stood here. To move 40-ton stones across mountains, rivers, and sea without wheel or metal or beast of burden, the mind refuses it. Yet here they stand, unarguable, each one an answer carved in defiance of disbelief. Some imagine rafts made from bound logs, lashed tight with rope of twisted reeds. The stones floated down rivers and along the coast, guided by hands blistered and raw. Others see sledges dragged over frozen ground, greased with animal fat to make them slide easier. Some say they rolled them on wooden balls, each one replaced by another, as the weight crushed those behind. And still others, those whose faith runs deeper than physics, whisper that the stones walked themselves. That they were alive, called by some music only they could hear, drawn eastward by the promise of their own destiny. The truth? No one knows. Perhaps the builders tried every method, generation after generation, perfecting the impossible. Perhaps it was not the how that mattered, but the why. You stop at the circle's edge, letting your gaze drift westward. Beyond the horizon lie those blue-green hills, still scarred by the quarries where the stones once slept. Imagine them there, half buried, shining faintly under the rain. Imagine the moment someone looked at them and knew that they were meant to move, to leave home, to find their place on this distant plain. Why? That question lingers like mist after rain. Some say the bluestones were sacred because of their source, Presili, a land of springs and wells, where water runs cold and clear as glass. In that region, the stones are streaked with minerals that glimmer faintly when wet, like veins of light. Perhaps the people believed the stones contained the essence of that water, that to bring them here was to bring the spirit of life itself. Others suggest something more intimate, that the stones were a bridge between worlds. The builders, or their ancestors, may have come from those Welsh valleys. To bring the stones east was to carry their homeland with them, to transplant the bones of their origin into new soil. A memory made solid, a promise that no matter how far they wandered, they would never be completely severed from where they began. You kneel and touch the ground. It's damp cool. Beneath the topsoil lies the chalk, and beneath that, the deep pulse of the earth itself. You imagine them placing the first of those blue stones into this pale ground, foreign meeting native, mountain meeting plain. In that act, something changed. The world became connected, distant lands stitched together through effort and belief. Some archaeologists think Stonehenge was a monument of unification, a gathering point for tribes who had long lived apart. The blue stones were the symbols of that alliance, each one representing a region, a people, a promise. The effort it took to bring them here was the proof of their cooperation. If that's true, then these stones are more than rock. They are agreements, written not in ink but in endurance. They say, "We will move mountains together." The wind picks up again, carrying the scent of distant rain and grass freshly bruised beneath your steps. You look back toward the inner circle where those smaller stones stand, glistening faintly like wet skin. Their color deepens when the clouds pass, from gray to blue to near black. They seem to breathe. Perhaps that is the real enigma. These stones do not simply sit. They exist with intention, with presence. Every one feels placed, not positioned. Every one carries memory, not weight. You begin to walk a slow circle around them. The air feels different here, thicker, denser, as though charged by invisible current. You remember the legends told by the old storytellers, that the blue stones could heal wounds, that they sang in moonlight, that if you listened long enough, you could hear the heartbeat of the mountains still trapped inside. Close your eyes for a moment. The hum returns, deep and steady. You can almost believe it. 1,000 years after these stones were raised, people still came to them. They built new monuments nearby, carved new paths. They buried their dead in the shadow of the circle, trusting that its power would linger. Even when the knowledge of the builders faded, the reverence remained. The enigma of the blue stones endured, shifting shape like light on water. In later centuries, poets and scholars tried to explain them with logic, but the plain refused their tidy answers. The stones resisted being measured by reason alone. They speak not to intellect, but to instinct. You run your fingers along one edge and feel a faint roughness, the grain of a tool long worn away. Someone shaped this, not perfectly, but carefully. You can almost picture the craftsman kneeling beside it, chipping away with a hammerstone, pausing to listen as if the rock itself guided his hand. Each mark is a conversation, each groove a reply. Maybe that's the real secret. Maybe the enigma isn't about where they came from, but about what they taught. To move something so heavy across such distance requires not just strength, but faith, faith in purpose, in cooperation, in the quiet persistence of will. The builders didn't only raise stones. They raised themselves. The clouds drift apart, and a thin blade of sunlight cuts across the plain. It strikes one of the blue stones, and for a heartbeat it glows, not bright, but alive, a deep, cold luminescence like the reflection of moonlight in deep water. The glow fades as quickly as it came, but you feel it stay behind your eyes, a kind of afterimage. It's easy to see how such a sight could become legend. A people who lived by the rhythm of nature, who watched stars and shadows for guidance, would have recognized in that glow a message. The earth itself can speak. And if the earth can speak, then we are not alone in it. The bluestones, in that way, were bridges, between the human and the eternal, between mountain and plain, between what is known and what is only felt. You think again of the long road they traveled, the rivers crossed, the forests cleared, the lives given. It was a pilgrimage, not a project. Each mile a prayer, each labor a verse. By the time the stones arrived, they had already become holy through the journey alone. You step back from the circle and let your gaze drift once more toward the western horizon. The sun is lowering now, casting the landscape in soft gold. The wind smooths the grass flat in waves. Somewhere out there, those ancient quarries still sleep under moss and rain, their hollow pits filled with silence. If you could stand in those hills, you might find the missing halves of the stones still waiting, their faces rough and unshaped, their hearts unawakened. You might hear the faint echo of tools against rock, the murmur of ancient voices measuring time with labor. You might see, in the gleam of wet dolerite, the reflection of the plain that called them east. Because maybe that's what happened, the plain called. And the mountains answered. The builders were just the messengers between them. The wind shifts again, colder now, sharper. The day is dimming, and shadows begin to gather around the bases of the stones. The light slides down their sides like water, pooling in their cracks, hiding in their textures. You take one last look at the circle, the gray against green, the blue against sky, and feel the same wonder that has bound this place to every age. The enigma of the bluestones is not just that they were moved, but that they still move us, across distance, across centuries, across silence. Perhaps that was their purpose all along. Not to be understood, but to make us remember what it feels like to seek understanding. The first stars appear, pale pinpricks in the deepening dusk. The air cools, thick with the scent of grass and chalk dust. The bluestones darken, their color fading to near black. Around them, the great sarsen stand like guardians, their edges catching the last light of day. You take a slow step backward, letting the stones fade into silhouette. The plain hums beneath your feet. Somewhere far off, a bird cries, one sharp note that cuts through the silence and vanishes. Night gathers. And with it, a question that has never stopped echoing. Were these stones chosen for their power? Or did their power come from being chosen? You don't answer. You don't need to. The question is part of the music now. You feel it move through the air like breath, turning toward the next mystery, the human hunger to explain what cannot be explained, to build stories as carefully as they once built the stones. Theories and speculation will come next. But for now, the stones keep their silence, as they always have, patient, enduring, eternal. And you walk onward, following the faint whisper of wind through stone, toward the minds who tried to decipher its song. The last light of day withdraws like a tide, leaving the plain awash in silver. The stones fade into silhouettes, their edges blurred by the rising mist. The air feels charged, neither warm nor cold, either night nor day, but suspended, as if time itself hesitates here. You stand at the center of the circle again, where questions feel closest to answers, though they never quite touch. The bluestones are dark now, gleaming faintly like embers cooling under ash. The sarsens tower around them, solemn, eternal. Above, the sky opens wide, endless, the stars returning to their patient vigil. This is where wonder turns to thought, where belief gives way to reason, and reason bends, gently, back toward mystery. For 5,000 years, Stonehenge has been asking us the same question, why? And for nearly as long, we've been answering it, with theories, calculations, and dreams. You look around the circle and imagine them, the seekers, the scholars, the poets, the madmen, each one standing where you stand now, peering into the dark and offering their interpretation. Every age remakes the monument in its own image. Every century adds another layer of meaning. The medieval monks said it was a shrine built by giants. The Renaissance scholars called it a Roman temple. The Enlightenment thinkers measured its angles and declared it a calendar. The Victorians romanticized it into a druidic altar of sacrifice. And the modern world, caught between science and wonder, calls it all these things at once. Theories have multiplied like echoes, each one reflecting something true and something imagined. Archaeologists see precision. Astronomers see pattern. Mystics see power. And some, still, see what can only be called magic. You tilt your head back, following the arc of the stars. The sky moves slowly, but not randomly. It turns on an axis invisible to the naked eye, a cosmic wheel turning with deliberate grace. The builders of Stonehenge knew that movement intimately. The monument's alignment with the solstices is not chance. The stones mark points of light and shadow with the exactness of a clock that measures centuries instead of seconds. And so, the first great theory was born, Stonehenge as a calendar. A machine of seasons built to predict the turning of the year. An agricultural necessity for a people whose lives depended on the rhythm of the sun. The outer ring, the trilithons, the heel stone, all arranged to capture dawn and dusk, solstice and equinox. Each year, the sun would rise and set in slightly different places along the horizon, and the builders recorded that dance in stone. But there's more than practicality in that alignment. You can feel it. A farmer marks seasons to survive, but a priest marks them to worship. Maybe Stonehenge was both a calendar for the body, a temple for the soul. As you walk between the monoliths, the wind picks up again, whispering softly through the gaps. It sounds like speech, words half-formed, almost comprehensible. You think of another theory, one born from those who studied sound, not light. They called it the acoustic temple. When wind passes through the circle, it produces tones that shift depending on direction and speed. Some archaeologists recreated the monument with computer models and found that sound waves bounce between the stones, creating echoes, harmonics, and reverberations unlike any other structure. They say the circle was tuned, not for vision, but for hearing. Imagine it, a ceremony where drums, voices, and wind combined into a living symphony. A structure that did not just mark time, but transformed sound into something sacred. A place where music could touch the divine. And then, there are the stars. Some astronomers believe Stonehenge tracks not just the sun but the moon, its complex 19-year cycle known as the Metonic cycle. Others see alignments to specific stars, Sirius, Aldebaran, the Pleiades, suggesting the builders were mapping not just the turning of seasons, but the architecture of the heavens themselves. In that light, the monument becomes an observatory, a prehistoric observatory of the cosmos. A place where early astronomers recorded eclipses, tracked planetary motion, and predicted celestial events. To them, the sky was not a void. It was a living map of gods and ancestors, a text written in fire across the night. Perhaps they believed that by arranging the stones below, they could mirror the heavens above, a reflection of order, symmetry, and eternal balance. As above, so below. You pause near one of the great trilithons and rest your palm against it. The stone is cold now, its surface rough with lichens. You feel the hum of your own pulse against its stillness. There are theories about this, too, about vibration, resonance, energy. Some claim the builders knew how to harness the Earth's magnetic fields, that the stones amplify natural frequencies, creating sensations that border on the mystical. Scientists dismiss it as pseudoscience. But stand here long enough, in silence, and you'll feel something move through you, a tremor not of imagination, but of presence. Whether that's magnetism or memory hardly matters. The result is the same, awe. Awe is the oldest form of worship. And so, the theories continue to spiral outward, each one as revealing of its creator as of the stones themselves. In the 20th century came the boldest suggestions. That Stonehenge was built not by humans, but by something beyond them. Visitors from the stars. The ancient astronaut theory that extraterrestrial beings, drawn to the solstice alignments, guided human hands or moved the stones themselves. It's easy to dismiss, and yet you understand why it exists. The monument's precision feels alien. Its endurance feels supernatural. When faced with something that defies our scale, we instinctively reach for the unearthly. The alien theory is not about little green men. It's about the human need to believe that the extraordinary must come from somewhere else. But what if it didn't? What if the wonder is entirely our own? Theories can dazzle, but they can also obscure. Each explanation, no matter how elegant, risks flattening the monument into a single meaning. Yet Stonehenge resists simplification. It endures precisely because it cannot be reduced. As the night deepens, the sky fills with constellations, the same stars that guided those who first walked this plain. You tilt your head back and let your eyes trace the slow arc of the Milky Way, a river of light pouring endlessly across time. Somewhere beneath it, those ancient builders watched too, mapping the heavens with their own eyes and hearts. Perhaps the true theory lies not in measurement, but in motive. Maybe they built Stonehenge not to predict the sky, but to participate in it. To feel the turning of the earth beneath their feet, and know they were part of something infinite. Maybe the monument is not a machine, but a mirror, reflecting every generation's desire to understand its place in the universe. The wind softens again, the grass bending under invisible hands. The stones cast long, moonlit shadows that crisscross like lines on a map. Each theory, calendar, observatory, temple, healing site, intersects here, at the center. None cancel the others. All are true in part. You realize that the act of wondering is itself the point. The stones were never meant to tell us what to think. They were meant to make us ask. You walk once more around the inner circle, your shadow moving beside you, long and thin. The stars above shimmer faintly in the reflection of rain pooled in the grass. The air tastes of cold metal and distant sea. In the hush of the plain, you think of all who came before you, priests and skeptics, poets and physicists, each one gazing up and feeling the same smallness, the same hunger to know. The monument has absorbed them all, their voices layered into the silence like strata in the earth. It will absorb you too in time. That is its secret gift. To remind us that curiosity is the closest thing we have to eternity. You stop. The wind stills. The plain holds its breath. The stones stand around you like questions too vast for language, their edges catching the last shimmer of starlight. And you understand that every theory, every speculation, every line drawn on a scholar's map is just another way of saying the same thing. We wanted to understand the sky. We wanted to understand ourselves. The wind stirs again, carrying your breath away, scattering it across the grass like one more offering to the unknown. Somewhere beyond the circle, dawn waits to return, and with it, the next chapter of discovery, the patient digging of spades, the glint of tools, the unearthing of lives buried in silence. Theories fade. Evidence remains. And the story, as always, continues. The stars begin to thin. The horizon, once black, softens to a muted gray-blue, the color of breath before sunrise. The wind hushes, as though the plain itself is pausing to listen. In that silence, the stones loom dark and patient, their shadows fading as dawn approaches. You can feel the weight of time here, millennia pressing softly around you, layer upon layer, waiting to be uncovered. For a moment, you imagine the earth beneath your feet as a vast library. Every inch of soil a page, every buried fragment a word written by hands long vanished. The story is still there, hidden just below the surface, waiting for someone to kneel, to brush away the centuries, and read. And so they came, archaeologists, trowels in hand, eyes bright with wonder. Where poets saw mystery, they saw evidence, Where myths whispered, they listened for fact. You can almost see them now, men in wide-brimmed hats, their knees deep in chalky soil, their tools glinting under the morning light. Women too, sleeves rolled up, notebooks open, measuring shadows, sketching every flake of flint, every trace of post hole. The plain that once echoed with drums now hums with the scrape of metal on earth. A different kind of reverence. A different kind of ritual. It began in earnest in the 17th century, when a man named Inigo Jones, architect to kings, stood here and decided the monument must have been Roman. He saw in the symmetry of the stones the order and logic he loved in his own designs. He was wrong, of course, but in his error he began something vital, the long act of asking. Others followed. Antiquarians with ink-stained fingers, carrying rulers, compasses, and boundless curiosity. They argued, dug, mapped. They made mistakes, but each one left behind a clearer shape of the truth. By the 19th century, archaeology was becoming a science. The plain was mapped with precision. Excavations uncovered bones, human and animal, charred wood, tools, and pottery. They found the great ring of holes, Aubrey holes, named for the man who first recorded them, 56 empty sockets circling the henge, perhaps once holding timber posts or stones now gone. You walk slowly across the grass where those holes still rest, invisible yet exact. Beneath your steps lie the ghosts of posts that once defined the circle's earliest form, before the great sarcens were raised, before the bluestones arrived. Stonehenge, it turned out, had not been built once, but many times. Each generation adding, shifting, refining. The monument was not a single act of creation but an ongoing dialogue across centuries. Later digs uncovered cremated remains within those same holes, men and women burned with care, their ashes placed alongside small offerings of antler, shell, and polished stone. It was proof that this place had been sacred long before the monument reached its final form. Stonehenge began not as a temple of stone, but as a circle of the dead. You kneel and touch the soil. It feels cool and damp, heavy with history. Somewhere below, there are still bones sleeping in the chalk, their stories half told. The 20th century brought new tools, carbon dating, aerial photography, ground-penetrating radar. Each advance peeled back another layer. What once seemed isolated revealed itself as part of something vast, a ceremonial landscape stretching for miles. The archaeologists traced avenues leading from the henge to the river Avon, discovered circles of timber posts, remnants of houses, and burial mounds arranged like constellations across the hills. It became clear, Stonehenge was not a monument alone, but the heart of a living world. A network of ritual and meaning spanning generations. You rise and walk toward the outer bank, where the first ditch was dug 5,000 years ago. The curve of it is faint now, softened by grass, but if you look closely, you can still see the subtle dip. Imagine the sound of that first labor, the scrape of antler picks, the grunt of effort, the hiss of soil sliding from wicker baskets. They dug for months, perhaps years, carving the circle that would anchor everything that followed. When modern archaeologists excavated that ditch, they found bones of cattle and deer, fragments of tools, and scattered among them, small flakes of human skull. Offerings, perhaps. Tokens of transition. Each fragment, each stain, a syllable of an ancient language we are still learning to read. Nearby, at Dington Walls, a vast settlement 2 miles northeast, excavators uncovered the homes of the builders themselves. Round houses made of wattle and daub, hearths still blackened with soot, discarded bones of feasts littering the ground. There were thousands of them, suggesting that this plain was once alive with people. It was there they found the greatest clue, animal bones showing marks of slaughter at the same time each year, midwinter and midsummer. The same dates marked by the stones. Proof that the rituals of the living mirrored the design of the monument. The people gathered here season after season, generation after generation, to celebrate the cycle of death and renewal. You can picture it now, Fires burning through the long night, drums beating, the smell of roasting meat mingling with the sharp scent of pine. The air alive with voices and laughter. Stonehenge, silent in the distance, waiting for the dawn that would pour through its center like molten gold. Every discovery adds texture to that vision. Fragments of pottery still stained by grain and honey. Antler tools left where they fell. Footprints preserved in ancient mud, each one a reminder that this place was once crowded with life. And yet, for all the spades and scanners, much remains unknown. Archaeology is a patient art, half science, half listening. You dig carefully, brush gently, measure, record, but you never quite reach certainty. The past resists being pinned down. It shifts as easily as sand in the wind. In recent decades, new technologies have peeled back the land itself like parchment. Aerial surveys reveal hidden patterns, rings of dark soil, faint geometric marks invisible from the ground. Some are older than Stonehenge, others younger. Together, they form a palimpsest of human devotion, an entire landscape written and rewritten over millennia. And always, at the center, this circle endures, patient, impenetrable, aware. You can almost hear the archaeologists speaking softly among themselves, their voices mingling with the wind. They debate interpretations, share quiet excitement when a new find emerges. A shard, a bead, a tooth. Every detail recorded, catalogued, placed into context. Each one another heartbeat in the long recovery of memory. But even they, for all their precision, fall silent sometimes. Standing here at dusk, watching the light move across the stones, they feel what you feel now, a reverence that data cannot capture. The monument speaks a language older than evidence. The work continues year after year, spade by spade, question by question. The chalk yields its secrets slowly, as if reluctant to give them up all at once. Each discovery brings you closer to the builders, and at the same time, reminds you how far away they remain. You reach down and scoop a handful of soil. Tiny fragments of flint catch the light. In your palm lies the dust of every age that has touched this place, the builders, the dreamers, the excavators, the pilgrims. You let it fall back to the ground, grain by grain, watching it vanish into the grass. Archaeology is not resurrection. It is conversation. The living asking questions, the dead answering in fragments. The miracle is that the dialogue continues. The sky lightens. A thin band of pink appears on the horizon. The stones shift from gray to gold as dawn brushes their flanks. Shadows stretch long across the plain. In that moment, the work of the archaeologists feels like part of the same ancient rhythm, the endless uncovering, the endless returning of light. You walk slowly toward the heel stone again, tracing the path those early scientists might have walked when the first sunlight struck their notebooks. The wind carries the scent of earth and rain, of freshly turned soil. It smells like memory itself. The discoveries may never be complete, but they are enough to remind us that the people who built this place were not abstractions. They were real, hands blistered, eyes squinting against the sun, hearts moved by purpose. They left behind not just stones, but the echo of their own persistence. And as you stand here now, watching the sun rise exactly where they intended, you realize the archaeologists were never digging for bones or pottery or post holes. They were digging for connection. For proof that we still belong to the same story. The plain brightens. The wind carries the day forward. The tools of science, the patience of human hands, the quiet wonder of discovery, all merge into a single truth: the past is not gone. It waits, just beneath the surface, listening for the sound of curiosity returning. You exhale, and the breath vanishes into the morning air. Behind you, the stones stand as they always have, watching, recording, remembering. Before you, the horizon glows with the promise of another day. And somewhere, deep within the circle's silence, you can almost hear it, the quiet voice of the earth itself, whispering to those who listen closely enough. Keep digging. I'm still here. The morning ripens into day. The mist burns off slowly, curling upward in pale ribbons until the sky clears. A pale, endless blue stretching over the Salisbury plain. The grass shimmers with dew. The wind is low, steady, carrying the scent of chalk and warmth. All around you, the stones gleam in sunlight as if newly risen. The world feels ancient and awake at once. For a moment, you just stand there, breathing it in, the clarity, the weightless quiet, the sense that time has stopped paying attention to its own passage. After so much motion, builders, worshippers, scholars, centuries, the stillness feels like a kind of truth. It's in that stillness that the true power of Stonehenge begins to reveal itself. Not in its movement, but in its refusal to move. Not in the noise of theories, but in the silence that has outlived them all. You walk slowly between the monoliths. The air between them is cool, shadowed. Your footsteps make no sound. The stones tower above, their surfaces rough with lichen and age, pitted by centuries of wind and rain. Each groove, each scar, each fissure is a timeline. They are monuments not just to those who built them, but to everything that has come since. Empires rose and fell while these stones watched. Kings were crowned and forgotten. Languages were born and died. Religions flourished and faded. Yet the stones remained. Through ice, through storm, through the long, unrecorded years when no human came here at all, they stood, unchanged, unanswering, complete. The silence between them is not absence. It is presence. It's the sound of endurance. You run your hand along a sarsen, feeling its cold surface warm slightly beneath your touch. It's coarse, almost gritty, but there's something living in the texture. Not life as we know it, but persistence, a memory of the sea that once covered this land, of the mountains ground down to form this stone, of the hands that placed it here and vanished. The wind moves through the circle, soft as a sigh. Shadows shift. Light slides across the stones like a slow tide. The monument seems to breathe. You think about how long these stones have been standing, 5,000 years, and how brief every human life has been in comparison. Each generation that came here brought its own questions, its own explanations. Yet the stones answered none of them. They didn't need to. Their silence was the message. It's easy to imagine the builders standing here on the morning the final lintel was lifted into place. The ropes creaking, the wooden frames groaning, the last great effort before completion. When it was done, they must have stepped back and looked at what they had made, this ring of light and shadow, and known it would outlive them. Perhaps they smiled. Perhaps they wept. Perhaps they said nothing at all. The circle wasn't meant to explain the world. It was meant to witness it. You walk outward toward the edge of the ditch where the horizon widens. The land stretches in every direction, open and gold. Sheep graze in the distance, tiny white shapes against the green. The same plain that once echoed with feasts and processions now hums with insects and birdsong. The scale of it humbles you. The silence fills you. Every civilization builds something to outlast itself, a temple, a tomb, a story. Stonehenge is all of these at once. A prayer without words, a memory carved into the earth, a question left deliberately unanswered so that those who come after will keep asking. In that sense, the stones are still doing their work. The archaeologists dug. The scientists measured. The dreamers speculated. But none of them truly disturbed the heart of it. The monument continues to absorb everything: faith, curiosity, love, loss, and returns nothing but quiet. In that quiet, meaning lives. You sit down on the grass, cross-legged, your back to one of the stones. The surface is cool even in sunlight. The wind brushes your face. You close your eyes and listen. There is sound, of course, the low hum of bees, the faint rustle of grass, but beneath that, deeper, there's a rhythm. The same slow pulse you felt before. The heartbeat of the plain. It rises through the earth into your spine, steady and patient, like the echo of some great drum struck thousands of years ago that never stopped reverberating. It's easy, in this moment, to understand why people once believed the stones were alive. You can feel their presence around you, not watching, exactly, but witnessing. They are the still eyes of time, unblinking. You open your eyes. The sunlight is shifting again, turning the grass pale and bright. Shadows stretch like spokes from the circle. Each one marks time in its own silent way. No clock could measure it, no calendar could contain it. The rhythm of these stones is older than measurement. They have stood through every human season, birth, decay, discovery, forgetting, and they will stand through countless more. Their silence doesn't mourn the passing of time, it sanctifies it. You imagine what it must have been like in the centuries when the world forgot this place. When the people who built it were gone and their names were dust. The monument would have been swallowed by grass, visited only by birds and wind. And still, it kept its vigil. It didn't need witnesses. It was its own purpose. The stones became the landscape. The landscape became the memory. You walk again, slowly, tracing the perimeter. Each step feels lighter, quieter. The sun is high now, casting hard shadows that sharpen every edge. The monument seems both eternal and fragile, as if one good gust of wind could scatter it into sand, and yet it never does. The silence deepens as you move away from the circle. You turn once to look back. The stones stand motionless, their arrangement so deliberate that even now, millennia later, they seem freshly planned. It's as though the hands that placed them have only just let go. You think about all the things humanity has done since, built empires, sailed oceans, split the atom, walked on the moon. And still, none of it explains why, or how, or what these stones truly mean. The more we learn, the more the silence grows. But maybe that's the point. Maybe the silence itself is the message, the reminder that not everything must be solved, that mystery is its own form of truth. Because when all the theories crumble, what remains is this: stone, sunlight, shadow, wind. The elements, eternal, indifferent, patient. They were here before us. They will be here after us. And in their endurance, they hold the quiet testimony of everything we've ever been. The wind changes direction, cool and soft. It moves through the grass in long ripples, whispering in a language too ancient to translate. You close your eyes again and let the sound wash over you. It feels like listening to the breath of the world. Perhaps that's why people still come here, not to find answers, but to feel that breath, to stand in the presence of something that has survived meaning itself. The silence of the stones is not empty. It's full of all that has passed through it. It holds every word ever spoken here, every footstep, every life that leaned on this plane for comfort. It holds even your breath now, added to the collection. Time stretches thin. The air hums. You feel small, but not diminished, part of the same pattern, the same endless rhythm of endurance. When you open your eyes, the light has softened again, turning gold at the edges. Evening begins to gather, quiet and slow. The stones glow faintly in that low sun, their surfaces warm, their shadows long. They look as they must have looked to every generation before you, familiar, inscrutable, alive. The eternal silence of stone is not stillness. It is movement measured in millennia, thought carved in matter, eternity folded into the present. It waits for nothing. It wants nothing. It simply is. You take a slow breath and step back. The world around you exhales in kind. The plain spreads outward, golden and endless. The horizon swells with the deep calm of evening. The stones shrink behind you, smaller with every step but never gone, always there, just beyond vision, steady as the heartbeat you still hear in the earth. And somewhere, in that fading light, a thought drifts through your mind, gentle, quiet, complete. Perhaps this silence is not the end of the story, but the beginning of understanding. You walk on. The plain darkens. The air cools. The stones watch. And in their silence, you can feel the final question forming, the one the builders left unspoken, the one the centuries have not erased. The truth hidden in silence. Dusk folds softly over the plain. The last light of the sun slides along the tops of the stones, gilding their edges before sinking beyond the horizon. The air cools, heavy with the scent of grass and chalk dust. The sky deepens to indigo, and the first stars shimmer awake, one, then another, until the heavens bloom with quiet fire. You stop walking. The silence here feels different now, not empty, but full. A living hush, dense as breath held in wonder. The plain seems to listen to itself, and you listen with it. The stones, dark against the fading sky, have lost their sharpness. They blend into one another, into shadow, into the very night that has watched them for 5,000 years. Their stillness no longer feels separate from the world, it feels like its heartbeat. You realize, standing here, that every step of your journey, the digging, the chanting, the myths, the sunlight, the speculation, has been circling back to this, the quiet truth that needs no explanation. The truth hidden not in words, but in silence. You sit down on the damp grass, cross-legged in the fading light. The wind is soft, brushing your face, playing gently through the hollows of the stones. The sound it makes is delicate, musical, like a flute played by the earth itself. You close your eyes and let it move through you. It's easy to forget, in all our seeking, that silence was the first language. Long before speech, before writing, there was listening, the stillness between heartbeats, the rhythm of breath, the pause before dawn. Stonehenge has been speaking in that language since the first day it was built. Its message was never meant to be heard. It was meant to be felt. You think back over everything you've seen, the raw labor of the builders, the precision of their alignments, the music of the solstice dawn, the myths of giants and druids, the bluestones that carried the memory of distant hills, the theories and the discoveries, the endless human yearning to know. All of it spirals inward, like the shape of the circle itself, toward this center point of understanding. Some truths are not spoken. They are witnessed. The plain has watched centuries of people come here, each bringing their own questions, their own hunger for meaning. Some sought healing. Some sought knowledge. Some came to stand where ancestors once stood and feel less alone. And Stonehenge, patient and silent, received them all, giving nothing, taking nothing, only reflecting back what they carried within. Because that is what silence does. It is a mirror, not a void. When you listen long enough, you begin to hear yourself in it, the same rhythm, the same yearning, the same pulse that once guided the hands of those who lifted these stones into place. The stars are fully awake now, scattered across the sky in rivers of light. The Milky Way stretches overhead, its arc tracing almost perfectly the curve of the horizon. The same stars the builders saw, the same constellations they aligned to, unchanged through every empire, every age. Somewhere among them, one star brightens, a pinpoint of gold that flickers like a heartbeat. You follow its light with your eyes and realize how small you are beneath it, how vast the silence that holds you. And yet, there's no fear in that smallness. Only belonging. That's the truth Stonehenge keeps, the truth hidden in its silence, that we have always belonged. To the earth. To the sky. To time itself. The builders understood this in ways we've almost forgotten. They lived in rhythm with the seasons, saw no division between faith and fact, life and death, body and cosmos. For them, the world was not a puzzle to be solved but a relationship to be honored. Each sunrise was a promise. Each stone, a memory of that promise made solid. You think of those hands, callous, patient, deliberate, shaping stones larger than imagination, guided only by rope, muscle, and trust. They never saw the world as separate from themselves. They didn't build to define nature, but to join it. The monument is proof, a circle where heaven and earth meet in quiet conversation. You lie back on the grass. The stars blur as your eyes adjust. The ground beneath you is cool, steady. You can feel the faint hum again, that deep vibration running through the soil, the heartbeat of the plain. It thrums gently in rhythm with your own. In this moment, everything aligns. The stones above, the earth below, your breath between them. The architecture of the sun, the calendar of the moon, the silence of the stars, each one part of the same design. Perhaps that's what the builders knew, that the circle wasn't just a monument to the cosmos, but a reflection of it. A reminder that the order of the heavens lives within us, that the same cycles turning in the sky turn quietly in our blood. The silence holds that secret still. You think about how much humanity has changed. Machines, screens, noise upon noise. Yet for all our progress, we still return to places like this. We still stand in fields and look up at stars, still seek meaning in the turning of the year, still crave the feeling that time might pause long enough for us to listen. Stonehenge endures because it answers that craving without words. It gives us permission to be small, to be awed, to be uncertain. You breathe in. The air is cool and faintly sweet. You breathe out. The sound merges with the wind, disappearing into the night. All around you, the stones stand in silence, but not in emptiness. Their quiet hum fills the plain. If you listen closely, you can almost hear it. The faint rhythm of centuries, the murmur of forgotten prayers, the soft scrape of flint, the laughter of long-ago children, the sigh of the last builder stepping away from his finished work. It's all still here, folded into the air. The monument does not remember, it is memory. The longer you listen, the more the silence changes. It becomes not a lack of sound, but a presence, a fullness that presses gently against you, surrounding, holding. It's the same silence that lives at the bottom of oceans, between the stars, within the space between one heartbeat and the next. It is the voice of time itself. You open your eyes one last time. The stones glow faintly under starlight, their shapes soft and luminous. The plain stretches away into darkness, endless, unbroken. Somewhere far to the east, the faintest hint of dawn begins to pale the edge of the sky. Another cycle starting. Another day waiting to rise through the heart of the circle. You feel at peace, not because you've found answers, but because you've learned how to listen. Perhaps that's all the builders wanted, for someone, one day, to stand here and understand that silence is not emptiness, but connection. That what endures is not what we know, but what we feel. You rise slowly, brushing the dew from your hands. The grass glows silver in the growing light. Behind you, the stones are still, dark, patient, awake. Ahead, the horizon brightens by imperceptible degrees. You take one step forward, then another. The air shifts. The wind moves through the circle once more, carrying your footsteps away, folding them into the same eternal rhythm that has always been here. And as the first fragile thread of sunlight breaks across the plain, the stones catch it, just as they always have. The light slides through the gap, touches the altar, and the circle completes itself once again. No beginning. No end. Only return. You watch it in silence, and the silence feels like understanding. And so, as the new day unfolds across the plain, the stones keep their vigil, ancient, eternal, unbroken. Their quiet endurance is the message, their stillness the truth. And perhaps that truth is this. Not everything sacred must speak. Not every mystery must explain itself. Some things simply are. The sun rises higher. The air warms. The plain shimmers. The stones gleam. And as you turn to leave, you carry with you the echo of that silence, the soft, steady heartbeat of time itself, guiding you gently, as it has guided all who stood here before, into the long, peaceful drift of morning, and beyond it, into dreams. And so, as the night settles, may these echoes of the past guide you gently into dreams. For the stones still stand, and in their silence, the world remembers.